Chapter 32:48. Are you really just looking around? Miss Sue, what do you like? Don't hold back. I'm a shareholder of this company. If you like something, tell me beforehand, and I'll reserve it for you. Otherwise, who knows who will get it when the competition starts? He Tianzu said. Miss Sue, you don't have to hide it. Since you're going to Triple X Company to discuss a collaboration, and you're in a hurry, there's no way you'll be staying here for an auction. I'm sure Miss Sue has your eyes on something here, right? Shirhan didn't expect He Tianzu to be this hard to deal with. This guy was a pervert, but he wasn't stupid. Chi-Chi's explanation only made him more persistent. But what could Shirhan say? She was only here to accompany Lin Yi. The only thing she knew was that Lin Yi wanted a blue crystal, but she couldn't tell him. What if He Tianzu tried to stop him? That wouldn't be worth it. Lin Yi was a bit impatient. Why was this He Tianzu so hard to deal with? If he knew that he was going to bid for a blue crystal, wouldn't there be some resistance? With that thought, Lin Yi could only say, I dragged Xiaohan to come with me, and I helped to contact Triple X Entertainment Company. So, Xiaohan was actually waiting for me. Lin Yi didn't want to be in the limelight, but he had no choice. Shirhan was a celebrity, but her social experience was much less than this person in front of him. This He Tianzu was very hard to deal with, and Shirhan wasn't his opponent at all. Oh. He Tianzu looked at Lin Yi, a flash of unfriendliness in his eyes, but he still said politely, Mister, you are? Mr. He, you're from the association, right? What's your status in the association? Lin Yi didn't answer but asked back. He needed to find a reason to calm He Tianzu down, or he wouldn't be able to attend the auction. Brother Yi, this is young Master He, the son of the association's chairman, He Luan. Chi-Chi introduced to Lin Yi, but didn't say Lin Yi's name. Ah, so it's the chairman's son. Nice to meet you. I came here this time to discuss a business deal with President He. Lin Yi smiled and extended his hand. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Lin Yi, the sales manager of Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company. I'm here to establish a trade relationship with the Overseas Cultivators Association to sell our products, the first and second level automatic cauldrons. Oh? He Tianzu stared blankly for a moment. He also knew about the first-grade automatic cauldron. He was also prepared to send people to investigate and see if he could buy some in bulk. However, the death of an elder made the Overseas Cultivators Association temporarily not dare to act blindly without thinking. They were currently investigating the background of the murderer, Lin Yi. Since this person had the ability to kill a heaven stage expert, he was definitely not a nobody. However, he didn't expect that the Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company would send someone before the association even sent anyone. This surprised He Tianzu. He was even more surprised when he heard Lin Yi say that there were second-level automatic cauldrons. His attitude towards Lin Yi became warmer, and he immediately shook hands with Lin Yi. Mr. Ling, does your company still sell second-level automatic cauldrons? It's about to go on the market. Lin Yi nodded, but it's limited. The current sales channel is only through the auctions of the Cultivators Association. However, I'm here this time to directly supply a few to the association. After all, you're far away from here, and it's not convenient for you to participate in the auctions. Our company also wants to establish a long-term business relationship with the association. Lin Yi spoke with conviction. After all, he was familiar with the first and second cauldrons, so he was able to trick He Tianzu in one fell swoop. Thank you so much. He Tianzu smiled and said, Then I welcome Mr. Ling to visit the Overseas Cultivators Association after the auction. This is my name card. As he said that, He Tianzu handed a card to Lin Yi. Lin Yi took a look at it. There was only He Tianzu's name, a contact number, and an address. There was nothing else. Obviously, the address was the address of the association. I left my name card in the hotel. This time, I'm just following Sister Xiao Qi to experience the auction here. Lin Yi kept the name card and said, It's fine. He Tianzu waved his hand. Mr. Ling, you and Miss Su are. Xiaohan is our company's spokesperson. Naturally, Lin Yi couldn't say anything else. He Tianzu had just calmed down, and there was no telling what he was going to do next, catching Lin Yi off guard. All right, then you're welcome to visit, Mr. Ling. I'll be leaving now. He Tianzu understood the gravity of the situation and knew that this was not the time to get on Lin Yi's bad side. This guy was here to give them a treasure, and the association needed it. If they were to piss him off, then the automatic cauldron would be gone. So, He Tianzu decided to give up for now. Linny let out a sigh of relief, but didn't let his guard down at all. He planned to leave this place as soon as the auction was over. After entering the auction, Lin Yi followed young Chi-Chi to the VIP room. Anyone with a certain background would have their own VIP room, but even if it was just Lin Yi's group, Lin Yi still checked the room carefully to make sure there weren't any surveillance devices. Shao-Chi, you're in contact with this association? Yeah, Lin Yi bro. I'm a member of the association. All the overseas practitioners are members here, and they don't need to do much. All they need to do is register, and they get a certain amount of elixirs and treasures every month. It's a public welfare organization, I guess. Linny nodded. It seemed like he Luodong really knew how to win people's hearts, gathering all these practitioners under his banner. He didn't need them to do anything right now, but in a critical moment, they could be very useful. And after Tang Yuqi became a heaven rank expert, it was only natural that the Overseas Cultivators Association wanted to keep him there. After all, Tang Yuqi had obtained a lot of cultivation resources from the Overseas Cultivators Association. It could be said that without the Overseas Cultivators Association, there wouldn't be a heaven-ranked Tang Yuqi. Chapter 3249. But the association didn't give him any face at all. They couldn't even talk about it. To put it bluntly, strength was the only thing that mattered in the world of cultivation. But if Linny had known that the auction house was the association's territory, Lin Yi wouldn't have come at all. Even if he did, he wouldn't have used the identity of Lin Yi. He'd have put on a disguise, like a 1,000 silk mask, or just let Chi-Chi show up. Who knew that the association would be built right in front of Chi-Chi's house? But since he was here, he couldn't hide anymore. Linny had no choice but to continue. I see. Why didn't you mention this before? Linny sighed. Before? You didn't ask before, Linny bro. What's wrong, Linny bro? It seems like you have some sort of grudge with the association? Chi-Chi wasn't an idiot. She could already guess what was going on. That's right. I killed one of their elders, Linny said. Ah, Elder Chin? Chi-Chi blinked. Evidently, she knew about this as well. Chi-Chi, you know about this? Linny was a bit surprised. He didn't expect Chi-Chi to know about this. All the members of the association know about it. Elder Wang came back alone, and Elder Chen, a sky-class mid-phase peak, was killed. They called us for a meeting to discuss what we should do, but we don't know much about that side, and I'm not a core member, so I don't even know who killed Elder Chen or how. I'm only attending the meeting to warn everyone not to mess with the ancient sections, Chi-Chi said. Linny nodded. It's fine, we're already here. We'll leave this place as soon as the auction is over. All right then. About the cooperation with XXX Entertainment, Chi-Chi hesitated. Forget it, we'll go straight to Island X, Linny said after a sigh. Shirhan and Cheng-Yi didn't say anything else. After all, their safety was more important. They could only postpone the money-making business. Who told that He Tianzu to fall in love with Shirhan? Soon, the auction began. Just like the other auctions, after the host explained the rules of the auction proceeded smoothly. Linny looked at the auction guide. All of the items were treasures. Of course, these were for normal people, things that could extend one's lifespan and cure illnesses. There were basically no items that were beneficial for training. However, thinking about it, it made sense. The Overseas Cultivators Association probably bought some elixirs in bulk from somewhere. However, the elixirs that were useful for cultivation were kept for themselves. These elixirs were just accessories that they bought to generate income. These were things that Linny didn't care about. There was quite a bit of competition, but it was normal. Most people who came to this auction were normal people. These people were after these treasures that could extend one's lifespan. Finally, it was time for the item that Lin Yi needed, the blue crystal. Lin Yi took a deep breath and nodded to Chi-Chi, indicating that he would be the one to bid. Lin Yi wanted to keep a low profile and try not to show his face. The next item is a blue crystal, a very rare gem. The host introduced the blue crystal. Of course, he didn't know that this thing could be used for crafting. Of course, even if he knew, it wouldn't have mattered. Blacksmiths were gone now. Even if this thing was used by blacksmiths, it would only be a decoration. The people who came here to participate in the auction were basically here for heavenly materials and earthly treasures like longevity elixirs. These people didn't care much about gemstones and crystals. These luxurious items could be found in any other auction, and they didn't come here to study them. Therefore, when the blue crystal was taken out, it didn't attract too much attention. Even those who had been bidding for it just now picked up their teacups and prepared to drink some water to relax and welcome the next round of bidding. Lin Yi, on the other hand, was paying close attention to this blue crystal. 8 million. A voice rang out. The starting price of this blue crystal was 5 million. In auctions like this, the starting price wasn't high. It was all about the bidding. But there weren't many people who wanted this blue crystal. In fact, the only reason they brought it out was to relax a little. They didn't expect to sell it for a good price. 9 million. Another person also called out his own price. However, after this person called out 9 million, the previous person didn't raise the price anymore. Obviously, he wasn't determined to get it. Someone else bid higher than him, so he gave up. Perhaps he was just a scammer. His purpose was to prevent the auction from having an awkward silence and an unsold item. 10 million. Chi-Chi called out. She could tell that the auctioneer was getting ready to ask for the first time. Evidently, no one was interested in this item anymore. Chi-Chi's bid surprised the man who was bidding 9 million. He looked at Chi-Chi's room and gave up right away. The blue crystal wasn't very pure, and there were a lot of impurities in it. It was a huge discount on the value of the crystal. As a result, 10 million wasn't a bad price, but an item of this quality wasn't very useful. Of course, for collectors and engravers, a flaw in a crystal was a fatal wound. But it didn't matter to Lin Yi. He used it for crafting, and this blue crystal was just a supplementary material. He needed to grind it into powder, and the impurities wouldn't affect his usage at all. After Chi-Chi, no one else made a bid. The auctioneer raised his hammer as well. The guest from room 27 bids 10 million. Are there any higher bids? 10 million. Going once. Just when Lin Yi thought he had it, a familiar voice rang out. It made Lin Yi frown. 12 million. The one who made the bid was He Tianzu, who he had met in the parking lot earlier. Chapter 3250. Evidently, He Tianzu had a purpose for doing this. Was he trying to go against Lin Yi? Lin Yi looked at Chi-Chi and nodded. 14 million. Chi-Chi called out again. 15 million. He Tianzu said. What was worth mentioning was that the prices here were all in euros, so 15 million was quite a high price. 17 million. Chi-Chi added another 2 million. 18 million. He Tianzu didn't hesitate. 20 million. Chi-Chi added another 2 million. 21 million. He Tianzu continued. Lin Yi took a deep breath. This He Tianzu was pushing the price to over 20 million? In this way, it wasn't as simple as it seemed. The price had already exceeded those ordinary heavenly materials and earthly treasures by a lot. The guests present were also very puzzled and puzzled. How could such a broken blue crystal with impurities be so valuable? And there were people competing for it? Very few of these normal merchants knew who He Tianzu was, since they were on a different level. He didn't interact much with them, but Frio Kristen, on the other hand, did interact with some of the merchants, but he wasn't the one bidding this time. Naturally, no one thought too much about it. Looking at Chi-Chi, Lin Yi raised 3 fingers. 30 million. Chi-Chi understood what Lin Yi was getting at. 40 million. This time, He Tianzu also changed the previous method of increasing the price by 1 million and directly increased it by 10 million. 40 million wasn't a small amount. It made Lin Yi's mouth twitch. Lin Yi had some money now, but it wasn't a lot. It was all invested in the orphanage and the second-level cauldrons. 50 million. Chi-Chi continued, giving Lin Yi a reassuring look before whispering, I still have money here, 100 million. He Tianzu simply did not bother to deal with it and directly began to quote a large price. Even Chi-Chi, who had some money stashed away, was shocked by the price. Of course, this was for Lin Yi's auction. Chi-Chi didn't hesitate. 150 million. 300 million. He Tianzu said faintly. Chi-Chi was about to continue when Lin Yi shook his head. It's fine. Give up? Ah? Chi-Chi blinked, not understanding why Lin Yi would give up just like that. I have some money stashed away, around 1 billion. If you can't do it, I can borrow from Lil Gio. It's not a matter of money. He Tianzu is the boss of this auction house, and no matter what price he calls out, it's just money in his left pocket. He can call out however much he wants, buying under the company's name and selling under the company's name. He doesn't even need to pay a commission, it's just a formality. He could even call out 10 billion. Chi-Chi thought about it, it was true. This auction house belonged to He Tianzu, and no matter how much she bid, she wouldn't be able to compete with him. And so, Chi-Chi didn't say anything and gave up. The guest in room 3 has bid 300 million. Are there any higher bids? 300 million. Going once, going twice, going thrice. Sold. The auctioneer closed the auction. Let's go. There's no point in us staying here. Linny stood up, and Chi-Chi, Shirhan, and Ching-Yi followed Linny, leaving the room and heading to the elevator. Chi-Chi, Shirhan, and Ching-Yi didn't say anything else. They knew that Linny didn't get the blue crystal, so he wasn't in a good mood. But there was nothing they could do about it. He Tianzu's actions were unpredictable. The four of them took the elevator to the underground parking lot. Just as they were about to get into the car, the door of the elevator dedicated to the internal passage opened. Inside the elevator, He Tianzu and Friano Kristen slowly walked out. He Tianzu, on the other hand, was holding a box, smiling as he walked towards Lin Yi. Lin Yi didn't understand what He Tianzu was doing, but he politely stopped. He Tianzu wasn't much of a threat in his eyes. He was a sky-class late phase peak, and with Lin Yi's current strength, even if he couldn't kill him instantly, he could still injure him when he was unprepared. But what would he do after that? There would be endless troubles, and he wouldn't even be able to escape from this city. Miss Su, I'm sorry. I was bidding just to personally deliver this blue crystal to Miss Su. He Tianzu smiled and passed the box to Su Shirhan. He did this for Shirhan's sake. It didn't matter which of the four of them needed this crystal. Since he gave it to Shirhan, it was the same as leaving a good impression on Shirhan. Since Shirhan was the spokesperson of Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company, no matter what, he couldn't force her. If things went sour with Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company, and they couldn't provide the first and second level cauldrons, then it wouldn't be worth it. So he changed his strategy, using this method to make Shirhan owe him a favor, and things could be done step by step. Thank you. Shirhan hesitated, but still took the blue crystal. Shirhan didn't know what this thing was used for, but one thing was for sure. Linny really needed it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come all the way here to participate in the auction. So even if Shirhan knew He Tianzu's intentions weren't pure, she still accepted it. Haha, Miss Su, then I won't bother you anymore. Go back and think about my proposal. I'll visit you later. He Tianzu smiled. With that, He Tianzu got into his sports car with Frio and left the parking lot. Linny watched the sports car leave, and Chi-Chi and the others got into the MPV. Linny said to Chi-Chi, "No need to go back to the hotel. Don't take anything, just drive away." Okay. Chi-Chi nodded and started the car. Inside the hotel, there were only some luggage and Su Shirhan and Cheng-Yi's clothes. Although it was expensive, it was better to lose them than lose their lives. Young Chi-Chi got out of the auction and headed towards the highway, but she didn't get far before a red Ferrari overtook her from behind. It was He Tianzu's car. Chapter 32:51. Was it because of him, or Su Shirhan? Maybe they were just passing by? However, He Tianzu's next move showed his purpose. The red sports car went straight to the front of Lin Yi's car, and from the front passenger seat, a person jumped out. This person was Frio Leono, a sky-class early phase. It was easy for him to stop a speeding car. It was absolutely impossible to kill him. How could a heaven stage expert be killed by a car? Not only would he not die, but the car would also be destroyed. So Linny said, "Chi-Chi, stop the car." Actually, when Linny said that, Chi-Chi was already slowing down. If the car was hit, she and Lin Yi were practitioners, so it wouldn't be a problem. But Su Shirhan and Cheng-Yi would be in danger. Of course, she didn't know that Cheng-Yi was also a practitioner. But Frio Leono didn't just stand there and wait for Lin Yi's car to come over. After he got off, he ran towards Lin Yi's car. Even if Chi-Chi stopped, it was useless. A sky-class's speed was not to be underestimated. When Frio Leono rushed over, he suddenly kicked Lin Yi's car. There was a loud bang, and the car shook violently, flying towards the side of the road. "Careful!" Linny shouted and quickly held Su Shirhan tightly, channeling the art of dragon mastery, using his chi to protect Su Shirhan. As for Chi-Chi and Cheng-Yi, they were fine. Linny didn't need to worry. Chi-Chi was a physical practitioner, and her body was stronger than spiritual practitioners. Cheng-Yi was an earth class, too. Even if the car broke, they would be fine. After a series of violent bumps and rolls, the car rolled a couple of times on the gravel on the side of the road before coming to a stop. The body of the car was completely caved in, but Chi-Chi and Cheng-Yi were fine. Shirhan, who was protected by Lin-Yi, was fine as well. However, the next moment, Frio Leonor ran over and grabbed the deformed door of the minivan. He pulled it easily, and the door fell down. The next moment, Frio Leonor looked at Lin-Yi and the others in the car mockingly. "Not dead yet?" Sure enough, the whole car is filled with cultivators. "You really can't judge a book by its cover." Frio said lightly, "Get out of the car and come back with us. If you surrender, I won't touch you for the time being. Otherwise, you will suffer." "Frio Leonor, what do you mean? Is this how you treat the customers of Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company?" Linny asked faintly, trying his luck. "Guest?" Frio Leonor smiled coldly and said faintly, "Lin-Yi, stop pretending. Do you think we didn't find out who you are?" In fact, Frio Leonor and He Tianzu just found out about Lin-Yi's real identity. He Tianzu had reported Ling-Yi and Su Shirhan's identity to his old man, He Luonan, and naturally, He Luonan had to investigate Ling-Yi's background to see if he was from Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company. In the end, Ling-Yi's identity was revealed. Ling-Yi was the murderer who killed Elder Chun, Lin-Yi. Elder Wang recognized the person who was pretending to be Ling-Yi immediately. So, He Luonan immediately called He Tianzu and told him not to act rashly. He had to stabilize Lin-Yi first, and a large number of reinforcements would arrive soon. However, He Tianzu didn't do that. After receiving the call, he immediately chased after Lin-Yi and was ready to make a move. He was young and rash. He didn't believe that Lin-Yi could kill Elder Chen in a second. From his perspective, it must be Elder Wang's fault. In order to avoid losing face, he exaggerated about how powerful Lin-Yi was to absolve himself of responsibility for his escape. In He Tianzu's understanding, no matter how powerful Lin-Yi was, how could a Sky-class early-phase master kill a Sky-class mid-phase peak in a second? Their strengths were completely different. How could he do that? It was like a Golden-class master killing a Mystic-class master. He Tianzu didn't believe it at all. Moreover, the most important thing was that Lin-Yi lied to him before. This made He Tianzu very angry. He wanted to get back at him. He couldn't give away the blue crystal for nothing. Of course, there was also another reason. He wanted to push Su Shirhan away as soon as possible. If Su Shirhan was seen by his father, he would most likely ruin his plan. He Tianzu's mnemonic chant was a kind of pure yang mnemonic chant. He shouldn't get close to women as it would slow down his cultivation speed. Although he was already a peak late-stage heaven rank, He Lutu wanted him to step into the perfection realm as soon as possible. Before reaching the perfection realm, his private life was very restricted. So, if Su Shirhan was seen by He Luanu, he probably wouldn't let him get close to her. He Tianzu was a lecher. Actually, in the end, it could also be explained that he had been holding it in for so many years. The children who were with him all cultivated different mantras than he did. Watching them play with women and changing lovers one after another, He Tianzu was truly envious. But because of the family rules, he could only sneak in. Even so, he was still discovered by his father and was reprimanded and placed in confinement several times. But this time, after seeing Su Shirhan, he couldn't suppress the desire in his heart. He swore to get Su Shirhan into bed. He couldn't wait anymore. So, he and Frio made a move together. Linny heard Frio call out his name. He knew that it was bad. They must know his identity already. There was no point in hiding it anymore. He quickly calculated in his mind. But on the surface, Lin-Yi still got off the car obediently. He said to Frio, "I can get off and go with you, but Yang Chi-Chi is just a friend I met in the Ice Palace. It has nothing to do with her. Can you let her go?" "Sure." Frio nodded. He didn't know what kind of relationship Lin-Yi and Yang Chi-Chi had. After all, young Chi-Chi grew up in Europe and Lin Yi was a practitioner from China. Chapter 3252. It was said that she was related to that powerful man back in the day, and so the association didn't want to offend her, even if the Common World Assassin Group wasn't much of a threat to them. And that man had disappeared for many years. It was hard to say if he was related to Chi-Chi or not. But they didn't want to start a feud if they could avoid it. After all, Chi-Chi was a member of the association. Young Chi-Chi, leave this place. Linny looked at Chi-Chi, giving her a reassuring look before telling her to leave. Chi-Chi trusted Linny unconditionally and didn't think much about it. She thought that Linny had complete confidence in dealing with these two, and her presence might make things difficult for him. And so, Chi-Chi nodded and left without another word. Perhaps, in Chi-Chi's eyes, Linny was invincible? In the Ice Palace, the Cultivator Trade Association, and the Sky Elixir Sex Test, Linny had shown extraordinary capabilities, and so Chi-Chi didn't think that he would be in any danger. After all, Chi-Chi still had to help Linny gather materials in Europe in the future, and it wouldn't be good for Chi-Chi or Linny if she were to get into trouble with these people. Chi-Chi was the one who took the blue crystal box, and this was what Linny hinted at. Frio saw it, but didn't say anything. If Chi-Chi really needed the blue crystal, then there was no need to investigate. Chi-Chi was a practitioner, and while the car was flipped and unrecognizable, it could still be driven with a push. Chi-Chi pushed the car back onto the highway and drove away. At this time, He Tianzu walked over as well. In Lin Yi's eyes, Frio wasn't a threat, but He Tianzu was. A Sky-class late phase peak. Lin Yi didn't know if he could kill him with his current strength. Moreover, Lin Yi had been too busy recently and had not tried to activate the 10th style of the Frenzy Fire 8 Trigrams Palm. If he could successfully activate the 10th style of the Frenzy Fire 8 Trigrams Palm, he might be able to arm wrestle with He Tianzu. Lin Yi took a deep breath and looked at He Tianzu. He Tianzu, I don't think there's any hatred between us, and I'm not lying to you. If you do some research, you'll find out that I'm the boss of Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company. If the Overseas Cultivators Association wants to purchase a Tier 1 and Tier 2 automatic medical cauldron, it has to go through my hands. You can't avoid me, so I think we can still sit down and talk. He Tianzu frowned slightly. Lin Yi's words weren't unreasonable. Could it be that his father had also thought of this problem when he didn't want him to act? If he had acted rashly, he would have almost ruined the whole thing. Although it was important to avenge Elder Chun, the automatic medical cauldron was equally important. With the automatic medical cauldron, the Overseas Cultivators Association would be able to concoct more medicinal pills and train more cultivators. I'll make a call. He Tianzu nodded slightly and dialed He Luodan's number. Father. He Tianzu didn't say much. He didn't mention a word about how he intercepted Lin Yi. He only said that he stabilized Lin Yi and told He Luodan what Lin Yi said. On the other side, He Tianzu nodded repeatedly and hung up after a while. How was it? Lin Yi asked. He Tianzu's answer would directly determine his next move. Lin Yi, you're the boss of Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company, so there's no need for you to lie to me. However, I can also tell you that the automatic medical cauldron is not only sold by your company, the Sky Elixir sect is also selling it. We can go to the Sky Elixir sect to buy it. We don't need to go through you. He Tianzu said. Lin Yi frowned slightly. Sky Elixir sect. Indeed, the Sky Elixir sect's imitation seemed to be troublesome now. They're just imitating our products. They don't have any research and development capabilities. Our second-level automatic medical cauldron will be on the market soon. Among them, I believe young master he knows very well which one has the best future, Lin Yi said. Haha, that's just your side of the story. The Sky Elixir sect is an old school of alchemy. How do you know that they don't have research capabilities? Without Butcher Zhang, I wouldn't eat a pig. He Tianzu said indifferently, however, if Mr. Lin wants to redeem himself, that's fine. As long as Mr. Lin can help me and let Miss Su Shirhan sign in my company, we'll be business partners. How about that? I'll go back and think about it? Lin Yi pondered for a while and said, think about it? If you nod, I'll take Su Shirhan away. Then we'll consider this settled. Otherwise, pretend I didn't say anything. He Tianzu threatened. In fact, He Luta's phone call had already made it very clear. If Lin could pay a higher price, then they could work together. After all, Elder Chen's life was not as important as the overall benefits of the association. Of course, if Lin Yi didn't cooperate, then there was still the Sky Elixir sect. They could still buy automatic medical cauldrons from Lin Yi. So, this ambiguous answer gave He Tianzu a chance to take Su Shirhan down. Lin Yi didn't think that this rich kid wasn't stupid. He knew to take Su Shirhan back first. It seemed that his plan to stall for time wasn't going to work. Thinking up to here, Lin Yi sighed and said, He Tianzu, have you thought about it? You really want to go against me? Lin Yi, what do you mean by that? I was kind enough to contact the film company for Miss Su Shirhan. How is that going against you? He Tianzu said calmly. Haha, I'm sure you know what you're thinking in your heart, don't you? Lin Yi smiled and said non-committally, Okay, don't worry about what I'm thinking. This is my request. If you agree, then we'll sit down and talk. If you don't, then we'll go our separate ways. He Tianzu looked at Lin Yi as if he had control over the whole situation, leaving Lin Yi with no choice. Is that so? Lin Yi took a deep breath and said, Let me think about it, can I? Of course. He Tianzu nodded indifferently. From what he saw, Lin Yi's so-called think about it was just because he didn't want to lose face. People under other people's eaves had to lower their heads. He didn't think that Lin Yi had the courage to go against him. Lin Yi pretended to lower his head and pondered. In fact, he was chanting the chant and suddenly, he made his move. Chapter 32:53. This was Lin Yi's first time activating the 10th form of Frenzy 8 Trigram Palm. Although Lin Yi couldn't guarantee success, he had to give it a try. However, Lin Yi didn't dare to use his full strength. Instead, he reserved a portion of qi. After all, even if Lin Yi could kill He Tianzu, there was still Freya Nu next to him. Lin Yi couldn't bet everything on He Tianzu. Boom dash, fortunately, Lin Yi successfully activated it. It seemed that using the 10th form of Frenzy 8 Trigram Palm at the peak of early phase of Heaven class was still possible. However, Lin Yi could clearly feel that when this palm landed on He Tianzu's body, it wasn't as shocking as when he used Frenzy 8 Trigram Palm on other people. He Tianzu's body shook a little, and he quickly took a few steps back. Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth, but he didn't die. Instead, he suffered a moderate injury. Changyi, hug me from behind. Lin Yi suddenly shouted. Along with his shout, he carried Su Shirhan on his shoulder. Changyi was an Earth-class practitioner, so her reaction was very fast. She directly jumped onto Lin Yi's back. Lin Yi started running. Under Lin Yi's feet was the wind-chasing lightning boots. Lin Yi already knew how to use this weapon. Now that he couldn't kill He Tianzu, he could only run. Chase. He Tianzu didn't think that Lin Yi would dare to sneak an attack. Before this, He Tianzu thought that Lin Yi would definitely give in, but he didn't think that Lin Yi would actually attack him when he was unprepared. Although this move wasn't fatal to He Tianzu, it was enough to affect his movement and strength. Therefore, He Tianzu directly ordered Freya Nu. He quickly took out a small medicine bottle, poured out a pill, and directly put it in his mouth. Then, he adjusted his breathing. Freya Nu wasn't an idiot. He was the vice leader's son. Although he usually hung out with He Tianzu, he wasn't He Tianzu's subordinate. He was only an early phase Heaven class. If Lin Yi could injure He Tianzu, then he must be a very powerful person. Although on the surface, Lin Yi's strength was only at the peak of early phase Heaven class. If Lin Yi could injure He Tianzu, then his strength was probably as high as the rumors said. But although it was very high, it wasn't very troublesome. If there were a few peak late phase Heaven powerhouses besieging Lin Yi, or a great perfection powerhouse, then Lin Yi would definitely be captured. Thinking of this, Freya Nu felt some regret. He should have advised He Tianzu not to act rashly, but now that He Tianzu was injured and Lin Yi ran away, he didn't dare to act rashly. Freya Nu, why don't you chase him? He Tianzu recuperated his body, and his injuries slightly calmed down. After catching his breath, he quickly asked, Young Master He, I'm only at the early phase of the Heaven realm. If I go after him, wouldn't I be sending you off? Freya Nu bitterly smiled. You aren't his opponent if I go. I might not be able to come back. He Tianzu was slightly startled, but he immediately nodded. Freya Nu was right. He was only at the early phase of the heaven realm. If Lin Yi could even injure him, who was at the peak late phase of the heaven realm, then killing Fry Anu definitely wouldn't be a problem. At this moment, He Tianzu believed that Elder Chen had been killed by Lin Yi, but he wasn't willing. He clenched his teeth and said, "Let's chase together. We can't let him escape. You deal with those two women. I'll deal with Lin Yi." Okay. Fry Anu had no problem dealing with the two women, as long as he didn't directly face Lin Yi. At this moment, Lin Yi had already run far away. Although He Tianzu and Fry Anu were Heaven Realm experts, it was still very difficult for them to chase after him. Looking at Lin Yi's gradually disappearing figure, the two were somewhat puzzled. How could Lin Yi run so fast? Lin Yi didn't dare to stop for even a moment. After all, although He Tianzu was injured, it was obvious that after taking the recover pill, it was not a big problem. If he caught up to Lin Yi, it would be very easy for him to kill the current Lin Yi. After all, when Lin Yi had urged the 10th style of the Frenzy 8 trigram palm, he had already used most of his strength and true chi, and the remaining strength and true chi were used to run away. Therefore, Lin Yi carried one on his back and the other on his back, running all the way on the highway. Fortunately, there were not many cars on the highway, otherwise they would have been scared to death by Lin Yi's behavior. Although He Tianzu and Fry Anu's speed was not slow, and Lin Yi had two people to drag him down, Lin Yi not only had the exquisite butterfly subtle steps, but also the gale-chasing lightning boots. His speed was incomparably fast. In the blink of an eye, he had left the two people far behind. This kid is stepping on the windfire wheels, right? How can he run so fast? He Tianzu also used all his strength, but not only did he not catch up, but he also chased further and further away, which made him very depressed. It is indeed a bit strange. There is something strange about this kid, Fry Anu also said. Although he did not guess that Lin Yi had a divine weapon, he could clearly feel that Lin Yi was different from normal people. Finally, Lin Yi disappeared, and He Tianzu and Fry Anu had to stop and sit in the wheat field by the road to rest. At this time, He Tianzu's phone also rang. "Hello, Dad." He Tianzu's voice was very careful. After all, he had made a mistake and made a mistake. "Tianzu, where are you?" He Luan's voice came from the phone. "Dad, I am sorry. I acted rashly. Not only was I injured by Lin Yi, but I also let him run away." He Tianzu said gloomily. "What?" He Luan's voice was stagnant, and then he became angry. "Didn't I tell you to stop him first, and then wait for us to go over?" He Tianzu naturally did not dare to say anything about Su Shirhan, so he could only say, Lin Yi seemed to have noticed something. After leaving the auction, he directly drove to the highway. We had no choice but to stop him. "Oh? Then you could have followed him. You gave up such a good opportunity for nothing." He Luan also knew that Lin Yi was a practitioner. If he ran away, it would be very difficult to catch him again. So he also knew that no matter how he reprimanded He Tianzu, it would be useless, so he could only say, forget it. If he ran away, then he ran away. "I originally wanted to use this incident to make Lin Yi give up some of the benefits, then we can also get the cheap automatic medicine cauldron, but now it seems that if Lin Yi ran away, then I am afraid that he will never come here again. We have nothing to threaten him with." Chapter 3254. What about Yang Qiqi? He Tianzu asked after some hesitation. Yang Qiqi and Lin Yi are probably just acquaintances, but they're pretty close. She grew up here and doesn't have much to do with the practitioners over there. Her background is a little complicated, too, so it's best if we don't touch her. He Luonan shook his head, rejecting He Tianzu's suggestion. He didn't want to offend people because of Lin Yi, especially since Yang Qiqi was a member of the association. If he took his anger out on Qiqi because of Lin Yi, it'd make the other members hate him. Who knew if they were enemies of the association when they made friends? If they took their anger out on every enemy they met, then there'd be no point in making friends with them. Then our cauldrons. He Tianzu knew that he'd gotten into trouble. "It seems like I can only ask for help from the Sky Elixir sect. Although I don't want to contact that person, there's no other choice. I can only ask for his help now." He Luan sighed. He'd been thinking about the automatic cauldron before, but Miracle Dr. Guan's company's cauldron had countless connections with Lin Yi. He didn't know much about the Sky Elixir sect, either, so he could only ask for that person's help. But he'd already broken ties with that person, and he didn't want to contact him anymore. Dad? I'm sorry. He Tianzu understood his father's predicament, feeling helpless and apologetic. It's fine. You and Frio can come back. Let's just leave this as it is. We'll deal with Lin Yi in the future. We know how strong he is now, and if he could only injure you and run away, then he's obviously not that strong, he Luonan comforted. Yes, father. He Tianzu quickly nodded his head in agreement. He Tianzu and Frio returned to the association's headquarters dejectedly, only to see He Luonan with a dark expression on his face. You two kneel down, He Luonan said coldly. He Tianzu was his son, but the association had its rules. Even if he was He Luonan's son, he still had to go through the motions. Yes, He Tianzu and Frio Leonor did not argue. Both of them knelt in the hall. Although Frio Leonor was accompanying them, he had no choice. Who asked him to not stop them? You guys should think about your own mistakes first. I'll contact the Chinese cultivators. He Luoluo really didn't want to make this call. It had been so many years since he left his hometown. 50 years ago, he had quarreled with his big brother. Then, 11 years ago, he successfully reached the peak of the late stage of Heaven stage. He founded the Overseas Cultivators Association, a sect that was not inferior to the ancient sections. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to understand the bitterness of this. Although He Luonan also understood that his elder brother reprimanded him for his own good, he still couldn't untie this knot in his heart. So many years had passed. Although he knew his elder brother's number and knew what his elder brother was doing now, he still hadn't contacted him. After all, his elder brother was in the light, and he was in the dark. However, today's matter caught He Luonan unprepared. He originally hoped to get the right to buy the automatic cauldron from Lin Yi, but now, he could only pin his hopes on his elder brother. After all, his elder brother had some relationship with the Heavenly Elixir sect. He Luonan, on the other hand, had no contact with the Heavenly Elixir sect at all. Arriving at a secret room, He Luan dialed the number that he had tried to call over the past few years, but was always cut off by him. Hello? Who is it? A deep voice came from the other side of the phone. Elder brother. After hearing this voice, He Luonan's eyes were filled with tears. For a moment, he was filled with emotion. Warhead? After hearing this voice on the other side of the phone, he couldn't believe it and asked subconsciously, It's me, elder brother. He Luonan originally thought that he had a grudge against his elder brother, but after saying this sentence, he buried the grudge in his heart for decades. Luonan, where are you? How have you been these past few years? When will you come back to help me? Now, the five-element sect is completely under my control. In the beginning, I taught you a lesson because I was afraid that Master would be wary of me. But now, I have the final say. It turned out that He Luonan's elder brother was actually ancestor Xianqian of the five-element sect. Back then, because He Luonan was young, he relied on the fact that his elder brother was ancestor Xianqian, so he said some pretentious words. Ancestor Xianqian usually doted on his younger brother. However, Ancestor Xianqian was afraid that his younger brother's words would cause Master to be afraid, so he taught He Luonan a lesson. Unexpectedly, He Luonan left the sect and disappeared. Because He Luonan was only an in-name disciple of the five-element sect and not a direct disciple, he was not very important. Ancestor Xuanqian's master did not send anyone to look for him. Because of the sect rules, Ancestor Xianqian could not search for him. This matter could only be left unsettled. Many years later, Ancestor Xianqian took charge of the five-element sect. Although he secretly inquired about He Luonan's whereabouts, there was no more news, which made Ancestor Xianqian very regretful. As he grew older, Ancestor Xianqian also gave up looking for He Luonan. After all, he did not believe that He Luonan could cultivate very well. After so many years, He Luonan might have already passed away. After all, He Luonan was just a little playboy who relied on his elder brother's strength to run amok in the sect. He was not very interested in cultivation. But, unexpectedly, He Luonan actually called. He was actually still alive? Elder brother, I am overseas. You know about the Overseas Cultivators Association. He Luonan said, choking with sobs. I know. Are you a member there? Come back and help me. I know about the Overseas Cultivators Association. Although it is not small, it is still someone else's business. Ancestor Xianchen invited. Elder brother, the Overseas Cultivators Association was founded by me. He Luonan smiled bitterly and said, Is your younger brother that bad? Elder brother can take charge of the 5-element sect, but I can't? What? The Overseas Cultivators Association is yours? Ancestor Xianchen was shocked after hearing this. Then, the Elder Qin who was killed by Lin Yi before was your subordinate? Chapter 3255. Luo Duan, it's not that I don't want to help you. I want to advise you that Lin Yi is not a person to be trifled with. You'd better not go against him. Ancestor Xianchen pondered for a moment and said seriously, Brother, what do you mean? Why is Lin Yi not a person to be trifled with? Did you listen to the rumors? I heard before that Lin Yi could instantly kill an expert at the peak of the late stage of heaven stage, but that's just a rumor. It doesn't count. He Luo Duan didn't expect his elder brother to believe these nonsense. He suddenly found it funny that Lin Yi was chased by my son until he was forced to retreat. He could only injure my son. It's not a big deal at all. As he spoke, He Luo Duan recounted the previous process to Ancestor Xianchen in detail. Luo Duan, is what you said true? Ancestor Xianchen was shocked after hearing it. In that case, Lin Yi was not a threat at all. He didn't think that his younger brother would lie. Although the two brothers hadn't seen each other for more than 50 years, Ancestor Xianchen believed that He Luo Duan wouldn't lie to him on such a big matter. Of course it's true that Lin Yi is only at the peak of the early stage of heaven stage. He is indeed a little more powerful than the other peak of the early stage of heaven stage. Being able to injure my son also proves this point. However, it's not a serious injury. A recover pill can completely solve the problem. He Luo Duan said. Oh? Ancestor Xianchen couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Things seemed a little unusual. You mean, Lin Yi ran overseas? Yes, Lin Yi is here. As he spoke, He Luo Duan told Ancestor Xianchen what Lin Yi did here. Lin Yi, wanna look for the blue crystal? Ancestor Xianchen was slightly surprised. He naturally knew what the blue crystal was used for. It was a material that could be used by blacksmiths. Taganlong needed the blue crystal to refine the essence chi necklace. However, before Taganlong could refine it, Lin Yi had snatched away the manual and essence chi niden. Then, he was injured, so the matter was delayed. Could it be that Lin Yi was looking for the blue crystal to refine a profound chi necklace? Patriarch Xianchen could not be blamed for thinking this way. After all, for cultivators, the blue crystal was only used for forging weapons. There was no other use for it. As for whether Lin Yi was a blacksmith, Patriarch Xianchen did not think too much about it. In his opinion, since Lin Yi could make an automatic medicine cauldron, he might be able to forge weapons automatically. Even if he could not, it would not be difficult to forge an essence necklace. He might be able to do it using other special methods. Big brother, what's wrong? He Luonan was slightly taken aback. That blue crystal can only be used by blacksmiths. No one else can. I still have a lot of it here. Big brother, do you need it? I have a lot too. I don't need it. I just suspect that Lin Yi picked up a weapon. Patriarch Xianchen shook his head and said, Forget it. Let's not study this. Although Lin Yi's performance on your side is relatively weak, there are a few rumors here. They don't seem to be fake. Let me tell you. As he spoke, Patriarch Xianchen told the legend of Lin Yi to He Luonan. After listening, He Luonan clicked his tongue in wonder. He had some doubts in his heart. The deaths of peak late stage and great perfection peak late stage experts were also a fact. He did not think that Patriarch Xianchen did not confirm whether these people were dead or not. So these people must be dead. As for how they died and whether it had anything to do with Lin Yi, he did not know. But it seemed that Lin Yi was really strange. Thinking of this, He Luonan nodded and said, Big brother, I understand what you mean. Let's forget about Lin Yi. I will not take the initiative to provoke him for the time being. Everything will wait until the truth is out. I will carefully investigate Lin Yi. Wait for my news. Patriarch Xianchen said. He was actually very puzzled. What was going on with Lin Yi? Why did the strength he showed not match the rumors? Okay, big brother, there is one more thing. Isn't the Five Elements sect related to the Heavenly Elixir sect? Can you help me to buy some first-grade automatic medicine cauldrons? He Luonan asked. Oh, this matter. No problem. Patriarch Xinshin agreed after listening and said, this medicine cauldron was made by my son-in-law. It is only sold under the Heavenly Elixir sect's brand. I will give you 10 later. Ah, thank you, big brother. He Luonan said happily after listening. It's a small matter. Patriarch Xinshin shook his head and said, Luonan, when I am ready, you can come and get it. Us two brothers, let's get together. Okay. He Luonan readily agreed this time. In, bring your son too. I have never seen my nephew. Patriarch Xinshin said. He Luonan and Patriarch Xinshin ended the call, and Patriarch Xinshin called Kong Mingming over. Father-in-law, why are you looking for me? After Kong Mingming came over, he asked respectfully. It's like this. Go and investigate Lin Yi, especially Lin Yi's battles with the Heaven Stage Masters, and the process of killing the Heaven Stage Masters in seconds. Investigate them in detail. Patriarch Xinshin ordered. Oh, this. What is there to investigate? Father-in-law, is there a problem? Kong Mingming was slightly stunned and asked curiously. It's like this? Therefore, Patriarch Xinshin told Kong Mingming about Lin Yi's conflict with the Overseas Cultivators Association in Europe. After listening, Kong Mingming's eyes suddenly lit up. If this was true, then it meant that Lin Yi wasn't as scary as the rumors made him out to be. If that was the case, then he wouldn't have to be afraid of Lin Yi anymore. He was afraid that Lin Yi was invincible, so he didn't dare to make a fuss about it. But now, thinking of this, Kong Mingming quickly nodded and agreed. Okay, father-in-law, I will go and investigate this matter now. You go. If there is anything you can't figure out, just report to me. We will discuss it together. Patriarch Xinshin said. I understand. After receiving the order, Kong Mingming excitedly went to investigate. After Kong Mingming left, Patriarch Xinshin fell into deep thought. He had never thought that the Overseas Cultivators Association would be his younger brother's force. If that happened, the Five-Element sect would be even more powerful than before, and they would have a greater say in the future plan. Chapter 3256. After all, this plan, with the participation of the association, it would be a great help. Sky-class late phase peak full circle. Each and every one of them would be useful. Lin Yi ran with Su Shihan and Cheng Yi. He didn't know how far they ran, how many small towns they passed, and finally, Lin Yi's remaining strength was used up. Lin Yi had no choice but to stop and put Su Shihan and Cheng Yi on the side of the road. Although, Lin Yi knew that the possibility of them finding him was very low after running so far, and not in a straight line, Lin Yi still didn't dare to be careless. After putting Su Shihan and Cheng Yi down, Lin Yi hid behind a haystack near an open-air farm. I'm sorry, Lin Yi. I caused you trouble. Su Shihan looked at Lin Yi apologetically. Lin Yi waved his hand. It's not your fault. He Tianzu being interested in you is just a small problem. The real problem is that I killed their elder Qin. But it's not a big deal. Didn't we run away? Is young Chi-Chi okay? Su Shihan was worried about Chi-Chi's safety. I'll give her a call and ask. Even if Su Shihan didn't say anything, Lin Yi was going to call Chi-Chi to ask about her current situation. The call went through quickly, and Chi-Chi's worried voice came from the other side. Lin Yi bro, how are you guys? We escaped smoothly, it's fine, don't worry about us. You, on the other hand, will you make enemies with the association because of this? Lin Yi asked worriedly. It's fine, they won't dare to do anything to me. Chi-Chi shook her head. Plus, I'm not stupid enough to admit our relationship. I'm just saying that you helped me during the test. That's why I treated you well. That's good. Lin Yi nodded, letting out a breath of relief. It seemed that Chi-Chi wasn't as dumb as he thought she was. But it was understandable. This was young Chi-Chi's turf, and Chi-Chi had always been a guest during those tests. She was weaker than the others, too. Who would they bully if not her? But young Chi-Chi was from the association, and that explained why she was leveling up so quickly. The association would definitely give her some physical practitioner's body refinement medicine regularly. Brother Lin Yi, are they not chasing after you? Do you want me to scout for you? Chi-Chi asked. Please don't. However, Lin Yi rejected her decisively. He quickly reminded her, Chi-Chi, don't be careless. Although they won't dare to do anything to you, you are still related to me. It won't be good if they get suspicious. What you need to do is to take the initiative to apologize to the association and cut all ties with me, understand? Chi-Chi wasn't too willing. Pretending that she had nothing to do with Linny was fine, but cutting all ties with him was a little. Chi-Chi, listen to me. I still need you to scout for information in the future. Nothing can happen to you. Linny said seriously. All right. Chi-Chi knew that Lin Yi probably had other things for her to do in the future. She could only nod. Also, that blue crystal, if the association asks, don't tell them you bought it for me. Just tell them you bought it yourself. Lin Yi instructed. If they ask you what you want to do, tell them that you heard that blue crystals can be used to make divine weapons. Buy them and collect them, and see if you can find someone to make them for you in the future. All right, I understand. Chi-Chi nodded and didn't ask any more questions. Also, if they ask me and Shirhan why we're here at the auction, just tell them that you're here. We're just here to watch the show, but we didn't see anything too good. Linny said. All right, I understand. Chi-Chi was a smart person. She knew that Linny wanted her to help him collect the other materials. If she said that Linny needed it, then she wouldn't be able to participate in the auction anymore. Then let's do it. After I settle down, we'll go to Island X. We'll meet there, Linny said. Island X was one of the places where Linny lived when he was young. His master and mistress lived there. It had been so many years since his master left, and he never went there again. Lin Yi, Shirhan, and Chung Yi took advantage of the dark to come to a small town nearby. They didn't dare reveal their identities, so they didn't stay in a hotel. Instead, they went to a bath center. They could rest there at night, but they didn't need to register. It was very convenient. Lin Yi's guess was right. Before Chi-Chi could even go apologize to the association, the people from the association had already come to find her. They wanted to know more about her situation. But when young Chi-Chi came to the guild, the chairman was very polite to her. Young Chi-Chi, please have a seat. I've called you here because there's something I'd like to know. President He, I'm sorry. I didn't know that Ling Yi was the enemy of the association, Chi-Chi said apologetically. Please punish me, President He. Chi-Chi said apologetically. Chi-Chi, what are you doing? He Luonin waved his hand. I'm not blaming you. I know you don't know, so it's not your fault. I just want to know more. All right, go ahead. Chi-Chi nodded. It's like this. You and Lin Yi, how did you meet? He Luonin asked. Ling Yi, that's Lin Yi. During the test, he changed his name to Ling Yi. In the Ice Palace test, I was bullied. Lin Yi saw that I was a girl, alone, so he helped me out. Chi-Chi said. After that, in the Sky Elixir test, he helped me as well, so we became friends. He Luonin nodded. It was more or less what he guessed. Chi-Chi and Lin Yi could only be considered strangers who met by chance. They were just slightly better friends. They didn't have any other relationship. Then why did he come here? He came here to help Shirhan and Qing Yi contact an entertainment company. As the host, of course, I had to entertain them, Chi-Chi said. Chapter 3257. I was the one who suggested the auction, actually. I said that there might be some resources useful to practitioners being auctioned off, and we'll let them join in the fun. Chi-Chi said. But there's nothing useful to them in the auction anyway. That's right, Chi-Chi said. Oh, the blue crystal? He Luodong nodded. That? I just bought it to keep. Chi-Chi suddenly felt a little embarrassed. I heard that blue crystal is a material for forging weapons, so I was thinking that I'd collect some materials and see if I could ask someone to forge a weapon for me when I reach Sky Class. Oh? He Luodan paused after hearing Chi-Chi's words. He didn't think that Chi-Chi would buy this blue crystal for this purpose. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Chi-Chi, the blacksmith profession has disappeared for a long time, don't you know? Even if you collect all the materials, you won't be able to forge a weapon. I don't know. Chi-Chi shook her head. Our association doesn't have it, but the ones in China don't either? One look at Chi-Chi's face, and Luodong believed her. The information in the association was very limited, and all the practitioners here got their information from the association. The association had never mentioned anything about blacksmithing, so it was normal that Chi-Chi didn't know about it. Plus, blue crystal was one of the materials for blacksmiths, and this was a top secret. Normal practitioners didn't know about it, and Luodong only knew a thing or two because he grew up in the Five-Element sect. As a result, he didn't think that this was what Lin Yi wanted. After all, Lin Yi and Chi-Chi weren't that close, and Lin Yi wouldn't tell Chi-Chi that he wanted it. It was a secret, and if he were Lin Yi, he wouldn't tell her anything. The only possibility was that Chi-Chi was telling the truth, and that this was what she needed. There shouldn't be any blacksmiths in China. Luodong shook his head, not caring about this anymore. But if you want to collect it, go ahead. Chi-Chi, thank you for your cooperation. Go get your training resources for this month, and you can go back. Ah, thank you, Chairman He. Chi-Chi said quickly. Luodong nodded and didn't say anything else. As far as he was concerned, Chi-Chi wasn't suspicious, and he only called her over to ask some questions before letting her go. Chi-Chi let out a breath of relief after leaving, but she didn't show anything out of the ordinary. She went to get her training resources and left the association. After Lin Yi settled down, he smiled bitterly. He wanted to go out with Su Shihan to relax, but he didn't expect something like this to happen. Fortunately, he had the Wind Chaser boots, otherwise, he wouldn't be able to escape this disaster. But at least he was temporarily out of danger, and the cooperation between Su Shihan and Cheng Yi was definitely not going to happen. Lin Yi wouldn't allow them to work with companies here, otherwise, if the association wanted to use them as a hostage and send Lin Yi to his death, it would be troublesome. This way, he'd lose some income. Thinking about Xiaoka's orphanage gave him a headache. It was too big, and it was too late to stop now. Orphans from all over the country were being sent over, and with Xiaoka and the dean's personalities, they wouldn't reject these children at the door. As Lin Yi was thinking about these things, his phone rang. Lin Yi thought it was Chi-Chi, but when he took out his phone, it was Dafeng Bro from Red Conch. Dafeng, what's up? Lin Yi quickly picked up the phone. Mr. Lin, it's like this. After a period of diligent investigation, I obtained some information. The addresses of the poison production bases of the Red Conches are all stored in the headquarters of the Red Conches. In the safe in the general manager's office of the Conch building, there is a document with the detailed coordinates of each poison production base. When I attended this year's headquarters meeting, the general manager of the Conch group, who is also the leader of the Red Conches, asked his secretary to retrieve the document from the safe when he was introducing the performance of the Red Conches. It was a yellow envelope. Elder brother Dafeng quickly said. However, Zhang Duozhu only introduced the profits of each base. He didn't say the specific location of these poison refining bases, but I saw with my peripheral vision that there are map coordinates on it. Oh, Dafeng, are you sure? This news made Lin Yi very excited. He'd been looking for Armadillo all this time, not only for himself, but also for Ziyu. Yes, I'm sure. Dafeng Bro said with certainty. Good. If this is true, then I'll reward you heavily when we get back. I'll raise your strength to Earth Class Late Phase Peak. Lin Yi said. This? Dafeng Bro was startled. He didn't expect Lin Yi to give him such a generous reward. Earth Class Late Phase Peak. If he really had that strength, then he might get a chi gathering pill from the headquarters or some other elixir to level up his training. That way, his strength would increase by another level, and he would be able to take on a more important position. With that thought, Dafeng Bro said excitedly, Mr. Lin, if I can raise my strength to Earth Class Late Phase Peak, then I can even get a position in the headquarters. At that time, I'll continue to work for you, Mr. Lin, and find out where your friends are. Okay, Lin Yi said faintly. Tell me, what's the address of the Red Conches headquarters? The headquarters of the Red Conches is in Europe's Realita town. On the Sky Crater Road, there's a red skyscraper called the Conch Skyscraper. That's the headquarters. Dafeng Bro said. Realita town. Lin Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he heard the name. When Lin Yi entered the spa center, he already felt that the name of the town was familiar. It was as if he'd heard it somewhere before. Now that doffing bro said it, Linny realized that the town he was in was Realita town. Chapter 3258. What's wrong, Mr. Lin? Brother Doffing didn't know. When he heard Lin Yi's laughter, he felt strange. Nothing. Which floor is the general manager's office on? Linny asked. I'm not sure about this. We had a meeting in the conference room. As for which floor is the general manager's office on, I'm not sure either. Brother Doffing said apologetically, I can't find out about this. It's okay. I'll find out myself. Linny nodded. This was a small matter. As long as he was sure that the document was in the general manager's office, it would be fine. Okay. Mr. Lin, be careful. Brother Doffing reminded. If Linny was fine, then he, Brother Doffing, would get more benefits in the future. If something happened to Lin Yi, then he would basically retire from his current position. Perhaps he might even be dragged into this matter. Linny hung up the phone and walked to the private room where Su Shihan and Cheng Yi were resting. He knocked on the door and soon, Cheng Yi's voice came from inside. Who is it? Yi, it's me, Linny said. As soon as Lin Yi's voice fell, the door opened. Cheng Yi was wearing a nightgown. Her hair was wet as she stood in front of him. Her wheat-colored skin was shining under the moisture of the steam. This made Lin Yi's eyes suddenly lit up. Needless to say, a girl like Cheng Yi who was full of wild beauty was quite attractive to men. Linny was tempted once before. Now, looking at Cheng Yi standing in front of him so coolly, Linny still felt a little unnatural. Are you guys showering? Linny didn't expect them to still be showering. No, Xiao Han is in the sauna. I'll have to switch later. Cheng Yi smiled. Do you think girls are like you, just taking a shower? Linny was slightly stunned, and then smiled bitterly. Yeah, every time Miss and Shu took a bath, they would take a bubble bath or a sauna. It was just that Linny didn't think so much. You're looking for Xiao Han? Seeing that Linny was stunned, Cheng Yi smiled and asked. She felt a little sour in her heart. Lin Yi probably wouldn't take the initiative to look for her, right? He must be here to look for Su Shihan. You were fine too, Linny said. I have to go out for a while. Text me if you need anything. Call me if it's urgent. Don't worry about me. Don't leave this place. You're going out? Cheng Yi was stunned and asked. Yeah, there's something I need to do. Linny didn't go into specifics, but he didn't need to. Well, then pay attention to your safety. Little Han and I will wait for you here. Cheng Yi nodded and did not ask much. Instead, she softly said. Cheng Yi was wearing a bathrobe, and she was telling him that she and Xiao Han were waiting for him here. No matter how he heard it, it was a bit ambiguous. However, regardless of whether Cheng Yi was seducing him or not, Linny was going to leave. Looking at Lin Yi's back, Cheng Yi sighed. Indeed, just like what Linny guessed, Cheng Yi really was seducing Lin Yi. She already told Linny about her identity, so she didn't need to hide anything. She didn't need to hide her love for Lin Yi. However, it seemed that Lin Yi didn't have any feelings for her. Shaking her head, Cheng Yi closed the door and walked towards the bathroom. She wanted to talk to Su Shihan about Lin Yi. After Lin Yi left the bathroom, he flagged down a taxi and said to the driver, Tianqing Road. Lin Yi spoke in English, so the driver could understand him. As for why Lin Yi was going to Tianqing Road, the driver didn't ask much. It seemed that his English wasn't very good. He only knew basic conversation. But the more it was like this, the happier Lin Yi was. It was best if no one asked him. The sky had just brightened. Tianqing Road wasn't a commercial street, so there weren't many people walking. After Lin Yi got out of the car, he began to look for a red building. There weren't many buildings on this street. Soon, Lin Yi found a red building marked Conch Group on the side of the street. Conch Group? Lin Yi shook his head. Why wasn't it called Fire Wolf Group? But what it was called had nothing to do with Lin Yi. Lin Yi's purpose of coming here was to steal the document from the general manager's office. Lin Yi bought a newspaper on the street, then pretended to be a passerby. He walked to a bench near Conch Building, sat down, and read the newspaper like a leisurely tourist. No one noticed Lin Yi. Lin Yi kept staring at Conch Building from the corner of his eyes. But what surprised Lin Yi was that there were cars going in and out of Conch Building's courtyard even in the early morning. This discovery made Linny frown. After all, there weren't many people in a company in the morning, but Conch Group was different. There were already so many people going in and out in the morning. Would there be people at night? However, looking at the top of the building, many of the lights in the windows were not turned off. Obviously, they were turned on when it was dark, but now that it was dawn, there was no time to turn them off. Obviously, there were people working in the Conch Group at night. Linny shook his head, picked up the newspaper, and walked to a restaurant on the other side of the street. He'd observed the place and found out that it was owned by a Scottish couple. He could tell from the clothes they were wearing and the way they talked to the customers. Therefore, Linny chose this restaurant and walked in. There were not many people in the restaurant because it was too early now. Only 2 or 3 customers were buying things. These 3 or 2 people were even buying takeout. They did not choose to eat in the restaurant at all. After they left, Linny bought some meals casually and sat down. Then, he pretended as if nothing had happened and chatted with the couple. "Auntie, you're not from here, right? You're Scottish, right?" Linny asked in English. "Yeah, young man, how did you know? Are you here to travel?" The proprietress had nothing to do at the moment. When Linny spoke, she started talking. "Yes, I've been there. Judging from your accent, you should be from there. The decorations of your store and your clothes are all from there." Linny did not lie. He had been to Scotland when he was on a mission in the past. Chapter 32:59. I came here to discuss business, so I took a look around on the way. "Actually, it's not for a vacation," Linny said. "I see. However, there's really no place I can recommend you to go. At most, you can walk around nearby and see the local customs," the proprietress said with some regret. "Right. What's the red building opposite for?" Linny asked casually. "It seems like there are cars coming and going early in the morning." "Oh, you're talking about the Conch Group," the proprietress said. "That's the largest trading company in the town. It covers almost all the trading industries in the town. The raw materials for our small shops are all supplied by the Conch Group. It's also the largest import and export company in this area, so there are people delivering goods and discussing business all night long." "I see." Linny was enlightened, but he had some doubts in his heart. It seemed that this Conch Group should be a company without any shady interests on the surface, but it disguised itself quite well. It actually did trade for people's livelihood. However, Linny didn't believe that the Conch Group didn't do any shady business. Perhaps these were just cover-ups. The closer it was to the headquarters, the more careful one had to be. Otherwise, it would be strange if a large group without any formal business did not arouse suspicion. This kind of import and export trade was suitable for money laundering. As long as the shipper was also one's own people, they could quote a lower purchase price. It saved a lot of trouble. However, this brought great trouble to Linny's investigation of the building. There were people coming and going in the group, so Linny couldn't sneak in. He could only disguise himself as a person discussing business and enter. However, it was difficult to come into contact with core office areas like the general manager's office. In order to prevent these serious businessmen from entering those areas by mistake, there would definitely be many security guards patrolling. After all, these shady things couldn't be shown to these people. Therefore, if Linny wanted to go to those key areas, he had to think of a way. Originally, Linny thought that he could settle it in one day. Now, he had to spend some effort. "Why, young man? You want to do business with the Conch Group too?" The lady boss saw the anticipation in Linny's eyes, so she asked casually. Actually, the look in Linny's eyes was fake. Linny naturally couldn't show his true emotions on his face. "Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I'm also in the trade business, and that partner of mine is actually buying goods from Conch Group. If I buy from him, I'll be making less money, so," Linny said, pretending to be embarrassed. "Hee, I knew it. How could you not know about the Conch Group, lad? So you're here for connections." The lady boss thought nothing of it, thinking that she had exposed Linny's secret. All she did was smile and say, "Actually, the Conch Group's starting point for doing business is very low. If you have the money, you can negotiate with them. Just like our restaurants, we don't actually need a lot of goods each, but if a few of us work together, we can be considered quite a sizable customer." We can still get the goods directly from the conch group. Oh, don't you need someone to introduce you? Linny was slightly taken aback. There's no need. The lady boss waved her hand and said, Lad, you can go directly. There's a reception at the entrance of their company. Tell them your purpose, and they will introduce you to the relevant person in charge. Is that so? Thank you very much. I'll go take a look now. Linny smiled politely after listening to the lady boss's words. It's not a big deal. Go on, lad. The lady boss said indifferently. Linny paid for the meal, left the small restaurant, and walked to the conch group. Sure enough, there was a reception downstairs of the conch group. Inside the reception, there were many businessmen asking about something. As soon as Linny entered the door, someone greeted him. Boss, what business are you looking for? A waiter asked politely. Aquatic products, Linny said. This was an idea that came to him after he saw a few trucks transporting seafood. It seemed that aquatic products were one of the main businesses of the conch group. Sir, how should I address you? The waiter nodded without any surprise and asked. My surname is Ling, Linny said. Oh, okay, Mr. E. The waiter didn't care much about Linny's name. He just registered it. Mr. E, how much do you need every month? About 30 million euros, Linny said. The price Linny quoted was not particularly high, but it was definitely not low either. The waiter's eyes lit up. They were all employees at the bottom of the hierarchy. They didn't know the true details of the company. However, their manager had already informed these people. For customers who needed a large amount of goods, the price could be appropriately discounted. As long as the customer's monthly cash flow reached a certain amount, it would be fine. Of course, these waiters seemed to be making a small profit but a quick turnover. In fact, the purpose of the company was very simple. It was to launder money. The more cash they took in, the better it was for them to operate. Sir, a customer of your level can meet the account manager directly. The waiter quickly wrote a list for Lin E and said to Lin E, you can now go to the account manager's office on the second floor and look for Manager Krieg. He will be your business manager in the future. Okay, thank you. Linny nodded. He took the list and left the reception room. So far, everything was very smooth. Linny successfully passed the first stage. Next, it was how to get the account manager to bring him to the general manager. However, it was a little difficult when he thought about it. For money laundering, the business manager level was probably the top level. At most, he could see the head of the business department. As for the general manager, it was almost impossible to see him. However, Linny could only take one step at a time. Anyway, who didn't know how to brag? Linny first drew a few big pies to see if the other party would take the bait. Linny stood at the door of the business manager's office and pondered for a moment. He pushed the door and walked in. Immediately, a man with a crew cut greeted him. He smiled at Linny and said, Sir, my name is Krieg. Are you looking for me? Chapter 3260. And the head of the Buffon family, old Buffon, who was now more than 80 years old, was a good friend of his master when he was young. He was also his master's disciple. Linny could think of only him who could pull the flag. Sure enough, when Linny brought up the banner of the Buffon family, Krieg's face suddenly changed. He looked at Linny with incomparable respect. Mr. E, hello. Welcome to our company for business cooperation. You can rest assured that our price and quality are definitely the best in the industry. Of course, to tell you the truth, 30 million euros, I just casually quoted a number. If our business is to be launched, it is definitely more than this number. So, Mr. Krieg, would you like to introduce your department manager? Said Linny. Of course, there is no problem. Even if Linny didn't say it, Krieg planned to introduce Linny to the department manager. The Buffon family was a big family. This level of order, he, a small account manager, couldn't handle it, and he didn't have the ability to sign it. He could only let the department manager do it. Thank you, Mr. Krieg. Linny nodded. Under Krieg's introduction, Linny smoothly met Red Conch's Minister of Business, Lut. This was a middle-aged man with a big belly, but with Linny's intuition, this person should know some secrets of Red Conch. Hello, Mr. E. Nice to meet you. Lute walked over and shook hands with Lin Yi in a very formal manner, then smiled slightly. Please come with me. Let's talk in detail. Okay. Lin Yi nodded. After the introduction, Krieg left Minister Lute's office. Minister Lute asked the secretary to pour tea for Lin Yi. However, when Lin Yi saw Lute's secretary, his eyes couldn't help but freeze slightly. The incredible shock flashed away. Although Lute didn't notice Lin Yi's shock, Lin Yi looked at his secretary for a long time. Lute smiled slightly. Mr. Yi is Asian, right? My secretary is also a very capable young man. Our general manager placed him by my side to gain experience. In fact, Lute said this to express his good impression of Asians. He also wanted to compliment Lin Yi. After all, Lin Yi was the god of fortune in Lute's eyes. The red conches needed to launder money. If they could get on the big ship of the Buffon family, then things would be much smoother in the future. Although it was only the supply of aquatic products to the hotel, if they cooperated more in the future, they could rely on the Conch Group to purchase the other facilities of the hotel. This way, the Conch Group could obtain a large amount of cash flow. Yes. Lin Yi smiled and said, "This young man is not bad." Lin Yi was shocked by the appearance of this Asian young man. Surprisingly, it was not much different from Lin Yi's appearance after he wore the thousand-thread mask. Of course, it was impossible to say that it was exactly the same, but it was somewhat similar. This discovery made Lin Yi very shocked and excited at the same time. Since entering the Conch Group, Lin Yi had been looking for a breakthrough. He wanted to quickly get close to the general manager's office, but he didn't know where to go. However, this young man in front of him allowed Lin Yi to find a shortcut to the general manager's office. In particular, Lute told him that this young man was sent by the general manager to gain experience by his side, which was enough to show that this young man knew the general manager. If Lin Yi pretended to be this person, he should be able to enter the general manager's office smoothly. Of course, for Lin Yi, who used to be an assassin, it was easy to disguise as someone who was similar to himself. However, at this moment, Lin Yi was calm. He just nodded and got to the point. Minister Lute, since you know my origin, then I also know some things about your company. It can be said that our cooperation is a win-win situation. I can increase the cash flow in the Conch Group, but you must give me the most favorable price. Lute was slightly stunned, but thinking that Lin Yi was a member of the Buffon family, it was not surprising that he knew these secrets. The Buffon family was originally a family that sold arms. It was similar to the Red Conch drug trafficking group, but arms were legal in some places. However, Lute believed that the Buffon family would definitely secretly do some illegal arms business, so it was refreshing to talk to smart people. Lute immediately smiled and said, "Yes, since Mr. E is a sensible person, then I won't say much. You just have to tell me, how much can your hotel group take from me in a month?" 50 million to 100 million. Lin Yi said, "However, this is only the hotels in the nearby area. If your company has enough advantages, you can also purchase hotels in other distant areas from here." "I understand." Minister Lute nodded and said, "How about this, Mr. E? Can you wait here for a while? I will go and ask the general manager, and then I will try to give you the most favorable price list. Even if you lose some money and add some freight, it doesn't matter." "Okay, then I will wait for your news." Lin Yi smiled. This was the result he hoped for the most. It seemed that Lute was an insider, and he did not intend to hide the purpose of his money laundering in front of Lin Yi. "Secretary Liu, help me entertain Mr. E." Lute waved to his secretary, then got up and left the office. "Secretary Liu? No need to be busy. I didn't sleep well last night. I can close my eyes and rest for a while." Lin Yi waved his hand, indicating that Secretary Liu did not need to prepare tea for him. "Okay, then you rest, Mr. E." Secretary Liu said quickly. Lin Yi closed his eyes. It looked like he was closing his eyes to rest, but in fact, Lin Yi was not resting, but perceiving everything in the outside world through the perception in the space of the jade pendant. Now that Lin Yi was a heaven stage master, it was easy to lock Lute's figure. Lin Yi's divine sense perception had been on Lute. Lin Yi saw that after Lute left the office, he went into an elevator. The elevator was dedicated, not an ordinary passenger elevator. One must swipe a card to enter. This made Lin Yi frown slightly. Chapter 3261. However, if Secretary Lu knew the general manager, he should also have such a card, right? Thinking of this, Linny felt slightly relieved. Lu Te took the elevator to the 29th floor of the Conch Corporation. He walked to an office at the end of the corridor and knocked on the door. After a while, an inquiring voice came from the office. "Who is it? What's the matter?" "It's me, Root, Fanny's secretary." Lu Te was obviously very familiar with the general manager's secretary. As soon as he said his name, the office door opened. "Hello, Mr. Lute. The general manager is in the office." "Please come in," Fanny said politely. This action made Linny realize that he had found the right person. It seemed that Lu Te was really a core member of the Red Conches. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to enter the general manager's office so easily. But thinking about it, it was true. The business managers in the business department might not know, but it was impossible for Lu Te, the business minister, not to know about the group's money laundering. "Lute, what's the matter?" A deep male voice rang out. However, as soon as the voice rang out, his tone changed. "Fanny, look outside and see if anyone is following us." As he spoke, he revealed his peak late-stage heaven-rank strength, as if he was preparing to use his divine sense to sense if anyone was following them. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat. He had not expected the Red Conch to have such a crouching tiger and hidden dragon. Linny remembered that Brother Doffing said that the Red Conch headquarters did not have any powerful experts. Now, it seemed that Brother Doffing didn't know many core secrets. Lin Yi also subconsciously stopped probing with his divine sense and spiritual power. His divine sense and spiritual power had already been discovered by the other party. If he continued, it might cause trouble. Since the purpose had been achieved, and Lin Yi already knew the location of the general manager's office, then Lin Yi didn't need to investigate anymore. Lin Yi didn't care much about what Lu Te said to the general manager. After all, he didn't really want to do business, and those trade secrets were worthless to him. Of course, on the surface, Lin Yi was still sitting in Lute's office with his eyes closed. He didn't show any abnormalities. "Dear boss, there's no one outside." Although Fanny was a beautiful secretary, she was still an Earth-class expert. Of course, with her strength, it was impossible for her to sense Lin Yi's presence. Not to mention that Lin Yi had already withdrawn his divine sense, Fanny couldn't sense anything. "Maybe I'm being too sensitive." The general manager nodded. It was only a fleeting feeling before, but when he ran the mantra and carefully searched around the office and even the elevator entrance, he found that there were no outsiders here. Everything was normal. "Lu Te, what's the matter?" "Boss, this is the case. The purchasing manager of the Buffon Family Hotel is here. He hopes to cooperate with us in the procurement of aquatic products." As Lu Te spoke, he told the general manager about Lin Yi's conditions. "In that case, this Yiling is here to ask for a favor?" The general manager smiled faintly after listening and said, "He gave us a large order, but he doesn't want us to make money?" "It's like this. From Mr. Yi's words, I can tell that he knows that we are in the drug business. These foreign trade are just for money laundering. That's why he came to us to cooperate." Lu Te nodded and said, "Hee, but it's not a big deal. With the strength of the Buffon family, it's easy for them to know our details. He wants to take advantage of us, and we want to launder money. It's a win-win situation." The general manager smiled and said, "We can agree to his conditions and lower it by 10% from our current lowest wholesale price. But the premise is that the monthly cash flow must be more than 50 million euros. "Okay, boss. I'll talk to him." Lu Te nodded. "Of course, you can ask. If he can reach a quota of more than 200 million euros, I can directly lower it by 20% for him," the general manager said. In fact, the supplier of the aquatic products was also a subsidiary of Red Conches. It was an aquatic product breeding company. This company didn't do it to make money. It couldn't even break even. It was only because of the secret financial support from Red Conches headquarters that they could live well. The only purpose of this company's existence was to help Red Conches launder money. After all, the breeding cost was really hard to say. It could be said that it was profitable even if it didn't make money. It was just that the people on the same side had the final say. "I understand." Lu Te didn't stay for long. After reporting the matter, he left the office and took the elevator back to his own office. Fanny, check the background of this E-Ling for me. Ask the Buffon family if there is such a person. The general manager said to Fanny after Lu Tay left. Oh, boss, do you suspect that there is a problem with him? Fanny was shocked and asked quickly. I don't know. Maybe it's an intuition. I felt that there was a high-level cultivator investigating me. I don't know if it has anything to do with this E-Ling, said the general manager. Okay, then I will contact the Buffon family in a while. Fanny nodded quickly. Tomorrow, we will make a deal with President He of the Overseas Cultivator Association. That old thing is an old fox. I'm afraid he will play some tricks. The general manager continued. Oh, boss, you mean that this E-Ling is from the Overseas Cultivator Association? Fanny was stunned. Yes, I'm afraid that they are here to scout. If they are honest with us, then it's nothing. I'm just afraid that they won't be honest, said the general manager worriedly. Boss, why is the Overseas Cultivator Association in the drug business? Aren't they cultivators? They didn't touch these things in the past. Fanny was a little confused. This was also what she wanted to ask before. They are cultivators, yes, but I don't know why. They said that they are in need of money. I can't find out the details. After all, the Overseas Cultivator Association is a supernatural organization. I don't dare to investigate too much and offend them. The general manager shook his head. After hearing that, Fanny clicked her tongue. She didn't dare to ask anymore. The red conches were usually very domineering, right? However, compared to the Overseas Cultivator Association, they were still a lot weaker. After all, the Overseas Cultivator Association was an organization where all cultivators gathered. The red conches were just a drug trafficking organization with cultivators in charge. Chapter 3262. Therefore, after a perfunctory and enthusiastic response, he said that he would go back and consult the board of directors of the Buffon Hotel Group to see what the maximum purchase quota could be before giving Lu Tay the news. Lu Tay didn't think much. He enthusiastically sent Lin Yi to the door and asked his secretary, Secretary Lu, to send Lin Yi out of the group. Of course, this was also convenient for Lin Yi. He could secretly take a few photos of Secretary Lu from multiple angles. Lin Yi planned to disguise himself after going back. After bidding farewell to Secretary Lu, Lin Yi quickly left the Conch Group without stopping. What Buffon Family Hotel Group's purchasing manager? These were all fabricated. Although Lin Yi's master knew old Buffon, the head of the Buffon family, Lin Yi didn't want to trouble old Buffon at all. He didn't want to implicate him. After all, Red Conch was not a good person. Although the Buffon family was huge, it was not wise to make an enemy for no reason. Therefore, it was very likely that the other party would quickly investigate that there was no E-Ling in the Buffon Hotel Group. Of course, Lin Yi didn't care about this. The identity of E-Ling was also the last time he appeared in the Conch Group. Tomorrow, Lin Yi would come again, but he would definitely not use the identity of E-Ling. Lin Yi stopped a taxi on the side of the road and went to the town's largest cosmetics market. Lin Yi came here to purchase some necessary cosmetic supplies. Tomorrow, Lin Yi's identity would be Secretary Lu. Although Lin Yi hadn't been in contact with these things for a long time, this was Lin Yi's old profession after all. He was familiar with the purchase. When these things were purchased, Lin Yi returned directly to the bath center where he stayed. Of course, before returning, Lin Yi checked for a long time. After confirming that no one followed him, he entered the bath center. Lin Yi's guess was right. Secretary Fanny quickly got in touch with the Buffon family. Although the Buffon family had a large business, it was still very easy to confirm whether there was a hotel purchasing manager called E-Ling. After all, a purchasing manager was considered a middle-level leader. The reply that Secretary Fanny got was that there was no one named E-Ling in the hotel group. Even in the entire leadership team of the Buffon Group, there was no such person. As expected, there was a problem. When Fanny reported this result to the general manager wasn't too surprised. He just frowned slightly and thought for a moment before saying to Fanny, "Fanny, go and contact the Overseas Cultivators Association. Tomorrow's transaction will be conducted in my general manager's office." Apart from President He Luodong, No one else is allowed to participate. Ah, will they agree? Fanny faltered slightly upon hearing this. If you agree, then we'll trade. If you don't, then forget it. The general manager said, "What happened today is a bit strange. I don't need to cause trouble for a business deal." "Yes, boss." Fanny nodded and went to carry out the order. Perhaps the Overseas Cultivators Association was really short on cash. In order to complete this drug deal, they actually agreed to the general manager's request. After all, although the Overseas Cultivators Association was a large business, most of it was a stable real estate business. The annual income was basically fixed. If they wanted to take out some extra cash, they would have to do other business. The general manager calmed down a bit after hearing the reply from the Overseas Cultivators Association. After Linny went upstairs, he didn't go straight to his room. Instead, he went to Ching-yi and Su Shirhan's room and knocked on the door. Footsteps came from inside the room, but no one spoke immediately. Linny could feel that there was someone standing behind the door mirror. After a while, the door was opened, revealing Cheng-yi's surprised face. "Linny, is it done?" Cheng-yi moved aside and let Linny in. "You're quite vigilant." Linny was very satisfied with Cheng-yi's actions. "Yeah, once something goes wrong, I'll run with Xiaohan," Cheng-yi said. Where's Xiaohan?" Linny asked. "She's asleep. She actually waited for you the whole night. She couldn't take it anymore, so she went asleep," Cheng-yi said. "You also waited for the whole night?" Linny looked at Cheng-yi and asked. I'm a cultivator. It's fine." Cheng-yi was a bit embarrassed. "Thank you." Linny knew that Su Shirhan didn't sleep last night, so Cheng-yi must have stayed with her. Now that Su Shirhan was resting, Cheng-yi still had to be vigilant, afraid that someone would come looking for trouble. "It's fine." Cheng-yi shook her head. "I've hurt Xiaohan too much in the past. Now, I can only try my best to make up for it." Cheng-yi's face suddenly changed. "What's wrong?" Linny quickly asked. "Before, Feng Tianhu called me, but I pretended not to hear it. I didn't answer or reply. I was afraid that he would ask me about what happened here. I don't know how to answer." Cheng-yi was naturally referring to the fact that Lin Yi wasn't that powerful. Not to mention killing a peak late phase heaven class master. Lin Yi wasn't even a match for a normal peak late phase heaven class master. Lin Yi was slightly stunned and frowned. The news of him being chased by He Tianzu would probably spread back very quickly. Lin Yi didn't believe that the association had no relationship with the other ancient sections. From the fact that they knew about the automatic cauldron, they were more or less connected to the other ancient sections. So, once the news of him being chased by them spread, then the godly ability that he had been bragging about before would be destroyed by itself. He would fall down from his pedestal. However, this was something that Lin Yi couldn't stop. Lin Yi couldn't control the mouth of others. He believed that once this news was spread, his enemies would become restless again, wouldn't they? When he returned, what awaited him? Sigh, Lin Yi had a headache just thinking about it. Just tell him the truth. Lin Yi thought for a moment and said, since he couldn't hide it anymore, he might as well let Cheng-yi tell him the truth. Otherwise, it would be the same as harming Cheng-yi. Cheng-yi was stunned. She didn't think that Lin Yi would let her tell him the truth. Chapter 3263. That's true. Cheng-yi sighed. What Lin Yi said was the truth. Even if she hid it, she couldn't hide it. Then I'll call him back now. Okay. Lin Yi nodded and said, after that, you should rest. I'll go prepare. I still have things to do tomorrow. Okay. Cheng-yi replied. After Lin Yi returned to his room, Cheng-yi called Feng Tianhu. "Yi, why didn't you pick up my call?" Feng Tianhu asked. "I was with Lin Yi and the others. It wasn't convenient for me to pick up," Cheng-yi said matter-of-factly. This was the most effective excuse. Oh. Feng Tianhu didn't suspect anything and continued. "How's it going over there? Did you sign a contract with that entertainment company?" "No, something big happened here." Cheng-yi lowered her voice. "Oh, what big thing?" Feng Tianhu was stunned. "It's like this." As she spoke, Cheng-yi told Feng Tianhu about how He Tianzu from the Overseas Cultivators Association came to harass Su Shirhan. Then, Lin Yi provoked He Tianzu. Then, there was a conflict on the road and Lin Yi ran away in fear. Feng Tianhu was shocked after listening to it. Yes, listening to Chen Yi's story, it sounded like a fantasy story. Are you serious? Lin Yi couldn't even defeat a peak late-stage heaven-class master? How is that possible? It wasn't strange that Feng Tianhu didn't believe it. After all, the rumors about Lin Yi were too miraculous. This difference was beyond Feng Tianhu's imagination. It's true, Cheng Yi said with certainty. Why would I lie to you about such a big thing? Feng Tianhu thought about it and agreed. Cheng Yi wouldn't benefit from lying about this. Moreover, whether this news was true or not, the ancient age would soon send news about it. They would know once they heard it. Thus, he didn't question it anymore and said, "Okay, I got it." You continue to lurk around Lin Yi and think of a way to ask Lin Yi why he couldn't even beat a peak late-stage heaven-rank expert. Also, what's with the rumors of instant kills? Okay, I understand. Cheng Yi nodded and said, I will try my best to get information from Lin Yi. Okay, then I'll hang up first. Feng Tianhu hadn't recovered from the shock yet. He needed to digest the news and find out more. He didn't think that Cheng Yi would lie to him. After all, Cheng Yi had no reason to lie to him. However, this matter was too important. Feng Tianhu didn't believe it directly. He wanted to wait and see. After all, so many heaven stage experts had died. If it wasn't Lin Yi, then who did it? Cheng Yi hung up the phone and was about to leave the washroom. But when she turned around, she saw Su Shihan standing in front of the washroom with a face full of shock and anger. Cheng Yi couldn't help but be shocked. Xiao Han, you're awake? Yi, who did you call just now? You actually betrayed Lin Yi? Su Shihan glared at Cheng Yi angrily. She woke up in a daze and wanted to go to the washroom. When she walked to the door, she heard Cheng Yi talking to someone on the phone. At first, Su Shihan didn't care and wanted to walk in. But when she heard Lin Yi's name, she immediately stopped. Su Shihan jumped in fright. Cheng Yi was telling the person on the other side of the phone about Lin Yi's identity. Of course, Su Shihan was very rational and didn't stop Cheng Yi on the spot because she didn't know who was on the other side of the phone. If she stopped her, would it alert the enemy? Would the person on the other side know that Cheng Yi was exposed? Would the other side immediately do something to Lin Yi? So, Su Shihan waited until Cheng Yi hung up the phone before she questioned angrily. Xiao Han, listen to me. It's not what you think. Cheng Yi was a little panicked. She didn't think that Su Shihan would wake up at this moment and hear everything she said in front of the washroom. It's not? I heard it with my own ears. How could it be fake? Su Shihan said coldly. Xiao Han, listen to my explanation. Cheng Yi didn't confess to Su Shihan. She had already made up her mind, but as time passed, Cheng Yi also betrayed Feng Tianhu. She didn't want to hurt the relationship between her and Su Shihan, so she didn't say anything. How do you explain? Su Shihan asked. Actually, it's like this. I have to start from that time at the orphanage. Cheng Yi knew that she couldn't hide it from Su Shihan today, so she decided to tell the truth. She started from the orphanage helping Su Shihan block an attack from the great elder of the Black Horse Society. When she talked about that time when Cheng Yi stood up to protect her, Su Shihan's angry expression immediately calmed down. Yes, Cheng Yi risked her life to protect her. That couldn't be faked. Su Shihan had always been very grateful to Cheng Yi. So, the great elder of the Black Horse Gang came to assassinate her mother at the orphanage. Cheng Yi knew about it. And the previous few assassinations, Cheng Yi also knew about it. It's just that Cheng Yi didn't kill her. Listening to Cheng Yi's story, Su Shihan's heart also softened. Cheng Yi was also a girl with a hard life. And what made Su Shihan helpless was that Cheng Yi's boss was actually her own uncle. This kind of internal strife in the family made Su Shihan have no temper, only a deep helplessness. So, Lin Yi already knew about this, and it was Lin Yi who told you to tell Feng Tianhu? Su Shihan asked. She didn't call Feng Tianhu third uncle, because she felt that Feng Tianhu didn't deserve to be her third uncle. Yes, Lin Yi said that this matter couldn't be hidden. Sooner or later people would find out, so there's no need to hide it anymore. Cheng Yi nodded and said, Then, I've wronged you. Su Shirhan sighed and said, to be honest, I really didn't want to lose our friendship. Luckily, you didn't disappoint me. Actually, I've done a lot of things to let you down, Xiao Han. I'm already very satisfied that you can forgive me. I don't dare to hope that we can be like sisters again, Cheng Yi said carefully. Chapter 3264. Lin Yi went back to rest. He still has other things to do tomorrow. Let's not disturb him, okay? Cheng Yi paused and said, but, Xiao Han, if you don't believe me, you can ask Lin Yi. There's no need for that. I believe you. Su Shirhan waved her hand and said, I'm just worried about Lin Yi. I don't know if the people from the Overseas Cultivators Association can find this place. Compared to the people from the association, I'm more worried about those ancient sections. Cheng Yi smiled bitterly. The association is overseas after all. But those ancient sects, if Lin Yi goes back, will they come looking for trouble with Lin Yi? I don't know. But it's useless for us to worry. Lin Yi should have a plan, right? Su Shirhan trusted Lin Yi more. She believed that Lin Yi should have a plan. That's right. It's useless for us to worry. Cheng Yi smiled bitterly and shook her head. After Lin Yi returned to his room, he put on the 1,000 silk mask. Then, he compared Secretary Lu's photo in his phone and began to put on makeup. Secretary Lu and Lin Yi looked very similar when he wore the 1,000 silk mask. As long as he put on some disguise, even Lu Te himself wouldn't be able to recognize him, especially people with Asian faces. In the eyes of the Westerners, they were all the same. After Lin Yi disguised himself, it was basically foolproof. As for Secretary Lu's clothes, Lin Yi didn't get it. This was a custom-made outfit from Conk Group. Lin Yi didn't have the ability to get it. So, Lin Yi planned to take it off Secretary Lu tomorrow. After doing all this, Lin Yi took out his phone. He hesitated for a moment and called Gu Xian. Boss, why did you call me? Gu Xian picked up the phone and was a little excited. Actually, the ancient era was filled with rumors of Lin Yi's awe-inspiring might. As Lin Yi's underling, Gu Xian was also very proud. If his boss was awesome, wouldn't his underling also be proud? Although others didn't know that he was Lin Yi's little brother, he was very happy. It's like this, Gu Xian. In the past 2 days, have there been any rumors about me in the ancient era? Lin Yi asked after some thought. Rumors about you, boss? Gu Xian was slightly taken aback. She pondered for a moment and said, No. If you want to talk about rumors, it's the one about you killing the Supreme Elder of the Black Horse Association. Apart from that, there's nothing else. Oh, is that so? Then help me keep an eye out. If there are any other rumors, inform me immediately. Lin Yi instructed. Now it seemed that the matter between him and the Overseas Cultivators Association had not spread back to the ancient era. Once it spread, he would be in trouble when he returned. He believed that even if the Heavenly Elixir sect did not deal with him, the Everyday sect and the Dongfang family would definitely deal with him. After all, these two sects had the greatest enmity with him and were almost irreconcilable. Okay, I got it, Gu Xian replied. In fact, at the same time, Kong Mingming had already found some information about Lin Yi with the help of Little E. It was really not easy to hide things in the ancient era from the Five Elements sect. From all kinds of clues, Patriarch Xianqin had roughly deduced a conclusion. After listening to Little E and Kong Mingming's reports, Patriarch Xianqin frowned. The conclusion he deduced was a little shocking, but it was reasonable. So, whether it was the Dongfang family, the Everyday sect, or the Black Horse Society, when the incident happened, the people from the blood-clad underworld sect were nearby, right? Yes, according to the whereabouts of the blood-clad underworld sect's patriarchs, we can draw this conclusion. Little E nodded. After all, if the blood-clad underworld sect's patriarchs went somewhere at the same time, as long as the place was not too secret, they could investigate it. In that case, it should be Lin Yi who hired the blood-clad underworld sect to kill the people from the Dongfang family, the Everyday sect, and the Black Horse Society? Speaking up to this point, Patriarch Xianqin had some doubts. This deduction was reasonable. The blood-clad underworld sect's patriarchs were at the place where the rumor happened, and the blood-clad underworld sect's profession was to kill people for others. As long as Lin Yi paid enough, it was not impossible for the blood-clad underworld sect's patriarchs to take action. However, the only thing that puzzled Patriarch Xianxin was that although the blood-clothed underworld sect was an anomaly among the ancient sects, it was still a member of the ancient sections. It wasn't wrong for them to take someone's money to eliminate a calamity. However, wouldn't killing so many top experts of the ancient sects incite public anger? In the past, although the blood-clad underworld sect had accepted business, they would not accept such tasks when it involved the leaders of the sect. After all, if one killed an ordinary disciple, the sect could let it go. Every injustice had its perpetrator, and every debt had its debtor. They would only settle accounts with the person who hired them. However, if one killed an elder of the sect, wouldn't that be a blood feud? Patriarch Xianxin did not believe that the blood-clad underworld sect would be so foolish. Wasn't this too arrogant? Did they want to become the public enemy of the ancient sects? Even if the blood-clad underworld sect had the backing of the five-element sect, they wouldn't dare to do this, right? Even Patriarch Xianxin himself did not dare to easily kill the pure and heavenly master of the everyday and everyday sect. This was simply forming a blood feud. However, Patriarch Xianxin felt that even if one of the blood-clad underworld sect's patriarchs went crazy, it was impossible for all three of them to go crazy together, right? Did these three want to become enemies with the entire ancient sects? Or was there someone even more powerful backing them up from behind? Patriarch Xianxin was really puzzled. There is this possibility. Otherwise, Lin Yi had a grudge with the blood-clad underworld sect in the past. Kong Mingming nodded and said, before this, Zhao Qibing hired the blood-clad underworld sect to kill Lin Yi. Patriarch Xianxin nodded. He did not believe that Lin Yi and the blood-clad underworld sect were in cahoots. There was obviously a huge conflict between the two, but what benefits did Lin Yi offer to make the blood-clad underworld sect take action? Chapter 3265. After pondering for a while, Patriarch Xianxin raised his head and asked, has the pure young heavenly lord of the everyday and everyday sect succeeded in breaking through to the great perfection realm? I'm not sure either. I heard that after Heavenly Venerate Pure Yin died, Heavenly Venerate Pure Yang has been working hard to break through to the perfected stage, but there's no news. Little One shook his head, indicating that he wasn't too sure. Go and investigate before deciding if this news should be released, said Patriarch Black Earth. Yes, I'll go and find out. Little One quickly replied. Ancestor Xianxin nodded. Now, the blood-clothed Yellow Spring sect had two experts at the peak of the late stage of Heaven Realm. This was an advantage that other ancient sects couldn't compare to. The reason why the blood-clothed Yellow Spring sect could become an anomaly was also because of their powerful strength. Although the five-element sect could suppress him, Ancestor Xianxin and Ancestor Xianzhan were both peak late heaven stage great perfection experts, and Ancestor Xianxin was even more powerful than ordinary peak late heaven stage great perfection experts, but the five-element sect really couldn't do anything about this. With Boss Bai around, Patriarch Xianxin had to consider Boss Bai when he did things. Since they had agreed, Patriarch Xianxin would not interfere with anything related to Lin Yi openly. If he wanted to do something, he could only do it secretly. Therefore, the blood-clothed underworld sect could only be dealt with by the everyday and everyday sect, the Dongfang clan, and Dark Horse Society. However, they needed the strength to make a move. In the everyday and everyday sect, there was only one confirmed peak late heaven stage great perfection expert, and that was Ancestor Wild Bull. As for Pure Young Empyrean, he was currently trying to break through peak late heaven stage great perfection. Whether or not he succeeded was still unknown. The Dongfang family, at present, has no great master, and the most potential to hit the great perfection Dongfang Yinxing has died, and Dongfang Badeo's age is too old, has passed the peak of life. It wasn't an easy task to ascend to the great circle of perfection. Finally, there was the Black Horse Gang. The Black Horse Gang still had a supreme elder in seclusion, as well as the Black Horse Gang's leader, who had just advanced to the peak of the Heaven Realm. These two were at the peak of the Heaven Realm. However, If they wanted to kill the three ancestors of the blood-clad underworld sect with an absolute advantage, they would need at least 3 great perfection realm experts to work together. Even 3 might not be enough to kill them, but 4 would be the safest. Therefore, whether heavenly venerable pure yang could successfully ascend to the great perfection stage depended on this. It was of the utmost importance. Patriarch Black Earth was used to planning before taking action. If he did not have absolute confidence that he could defeat the blood-clothed Yellow Spring sect, he would rather not release the news for the time being. After all, as long as the Netherworld sect didn't fall, it would be difficult to touch Lin Yi. After putting on makeup, Lin Yi looked at himself in the mirror. He looked exactly like Secretary Liu in the phone. After doing all this, Lin Yi walked out of the bath center. Of course, the bathing center was crowded. No one would notice whether Lin Yi was a customer of the bathhouse or not. On the side of the road, Lin Yi hailed a taxi and headed straight for the Red Conch Group. Soon, he arrived at the Conch Group. After Lin Yi paid the fare, he swaggered into the Conch Group. His current appearance was that of Secretary Liu. He believed that all the employees in the Conch Group recognized him. True enough. As soon as Lin Yi entered the company, someone greeted Lin Yi. Secretary Liu, why are you out? Weren't you in Mr. Lute's office just now? A staff member of the Conch Group's business department greeted Secretary Liu. Hee. Lin Yi smiled. He imitated Secretary Liu's voice and said, I went out to do something. Oh. The staff member just asked casually and did not suspect anything at all. He turned around and went to do his own thing. Lin Yi took the elevator and went to the floor where Lute's office was located. What Lin Yi had to do now was to find Secretary Liu as soon as possible. He wanted to knock Secretary Liu out and then wear Secretary Liu's clothes to find the general manager of the Conch Group. After coming out of the elevator, Lin Yi did not wander around. Instead, he went straight to the men's room. This floor was not like the one below. If Secretary Liu and Lin Yi appeared at the same time, it was hard to guarantee that they would not be discovered. Therefore, Lin Yi planned to wait in the bathroom. He didn't believe that Secretary Liu would always not come to the bathroom. As long as Secretary Liu came to the bathroom, then Lin Yi's opportunity would come. In the bathroom, Lin Yi began to wait for a long time. Fortunately, there were many cubicles in the toilet here. One of them was locked for a long time, so no one would be suspicious. Patience was easy for Lin Yi. He waited for more than 3 hours, and Secretary Liu still did not appear. However, Lin Yi was not in a hurry. Finally, after about 3.5 hours, Secretary Liu walked into the bathroom. Secretary Liu was peeing in the urinal. Lin Yi was not in a hurry. When Secretary Liu finished peeing and was about to put on his belt, Lin Yi quietly appeared behind Secretary Liu. Secretary Liu directly took the Fushi 9 needles from the jade pendant space into his hand. He pricked Secretary Liu's body a few times, and Secretary Liu directly fainted on the ground. After being pricked by Lin Yi, Secretary Liu wouldn't wake up for a while. Moreover, the most important thing was that after he woke up, he would have temporary amnesia. He wouldn't remember what happened before. He would have a blank memory. This was also the effect that Lin Yi wanted to confuse the people of the Red Conch. After dragging Secretary Liu into the toilet cubicle, Lin Yi quickly took off his clothes, pants, and watch and put them on himself. Then, he locked the door of the cubicle and jumped out from the top of the cubicle. At this moment, Lin Yi had become Secretary Liu. Lin Yi came out of the bathroom. He didn't stay for long. He took the elevator directly and went to the floor where the general manager's office was. With Secretary Liu's elevator card in his pocket, Lin Yi easily passed the verification. The elevator rose slowly. After stopping on the 29th floor, the elevator door opened. Lin Yi walked out of the elevator. At this moment, there was another person in the corridor. This person was actually the general manager's secretary, Fanny. Isn't this Mr. Liu? Why are you here? Are you looking for the boss? Fanny looked strangely at Lin Yi, who came out of the elevator. That's right, Miss Fanny. Where are you going? Lin Yi already knew Fanny's name from her chest card. When he probed with his perception yesterday, he seemed to have heard this name, but he didn't know the specific spelling. Chapter 3266. Oh, I see. Linny nodded and said, Great, then I'll go with you to get the water. Linny didn't expect the CEO's office to have no hot water in the huge conch group. He had to go to the hot water supply on every floor to get hot water. However, Lin E wasn't very clear about the internal management of the conch group. Anyway, it was easier for Lin E to get close to the CEO's office. Okay, Fanny agreed readily. I can't carry it all by myself. You can help me carry it in. I'm not an outsider anyway. Of course, no problem. Linny nodded. Not an outsider? Linny really didn't know why he wasn't an outsider. However, Linny knew that Secretary Liu was arranged by the CEO to train beside Liu Te. Perhaps this Secretary Liu was a relative of the CEO's family? Linny didn't guess wrong. Secretary Liu was the younger brother of one of the CEO's concubines. That was why he took care of him. Of course, this wasn't something that Linny knew. Together with Fanny, they went to the hot water supply. Lin E carried the brewed coffee and walked to the CEO's office with Fanny. Fanny knew Secretary Liu's identity. She was also the CEO's mistress. This kind of nepotism was common in the conch group. She didn't treat Secretary Liu as an outsider at all. After knocking on the door, Fanny pushed it open and entered. Linny also walked in with the coffee. The CEO was slightly taken aback when he saw someone following behind Fanny. However, when he saw that it was Secretary Liu, he didn't say anything. After all, he was one of them and knew the secrets of the group. Lin E placed the coffee in front of the CEO and the president of the Overseas Cultivators Association, He Luonan. Yes, Lin E was very shocked at this moment. He didn't expect He Luonan to appear here. Could it be that He Luonan knew that he was already in Ruilita town and wanted to find him through the red conch? Thinking of this possibility, Lin Yi's heart was slightly shocked, but he didn't show it on his face. After all, his current identity was Secretary Liu, and it had nothing to do with Lin Yi. President He, the goods are ready. I wonder if you've prepared the money? The general manager didn't seem to avoid Lin Yi in the slightest and spoke directly. Of course. Wan pointed at a suitcase at his feet and nodded. Lin Yi listened to the conversation between these two people, and his heart suddenly relaxed. It turned out that these two people were here to trade drugs. It had nothing to do with me. However, why did President He want to trade drugs? Why did the Overseas Cultivators Association suddenly become involved in such a business? Of course, what Linny did not know was that President He wanted to purchase a batch of first-grade automatic medicinal cauldrons, but when he inquired about the price with Patriarch Black Earth, he was given a fright. Why is this thing so expensive? The internal price wasn't cheap either. President He wanted to purchase dozens of medicinal cauldrons, which was more than 10 billion yuan. Where did President He find such a large budget? Without money, he could only think of other ways to earn money. The previous businesses of the Overseas Cultivators Association all had fixed income. It was impossible to say that one of the businesses could earn more money if he wanted to. That was impossible. Therefore, President He and a few of the higher-ups of the Overseas Cultivators Association discussed and decided to sell drugs. This was the fastest way to earn money. Moreover, they had their own hotels and bars. They didn't do this business in the past because the Overseas Cultivators Association didn't want to get involved in the underworld. With a stable income, there was no need to worry about these things. However, it was different now. If they didn't earn money, they wouldn't have the money to buy automatic medicinal cauldrons. Therefore, President He personally visited the conch group to conduct the drug trade. Of course, President He was an expert at the peak of the late stage of Heaven's stage. That was why he dared to go alone. If it was someone else, they really wouldn't dare to come here. However, it was also because the Overseas Cultivators Association was powerful, and this was the first time they were doing business with the conch group that the general manager was so careful. He was afraid that the other party would do something bad, so he decided to conduct the transaction at the headquarters of the conch group. All right, since we all understand, then there's no need to say anything more. The general manager said, President He, shall we do the transaction now? Okay, sure. He Luta nodded and said, but first, you should let me see the goods, right? Of course, no problem. The general manager nodded. When buying something, one had to look at the goods. This was the rule that almost all transactions followed. It wasn't strange to have the goods first and the payment later. As he said that, the general manager waved to Fanny and said, "Fanny, go and take the goods out." "Yes, boss." Fanny nodded and turned to go inside the office. "I'll help you." Linny seized the opportunity and said quickly. This was because Linny had already seen that there was no safe in the outer room of the general manager's office. Obviously, no one would put a safe for storing documents in the outer room. They would be placed in a place in the office where outsiders couldn't reach. Fanny didn't express any objections and let Linny follow her into the inner room. Even the general manager didn't feel that there was anything wrong with this. Secretary Lu's sister was his concubine and had already given birth to a son. Therefore, his trust in Secretary Lu was no less than Fanny's. Moreover, Secretary Lu was a warm-hearted and diligent young man. Otherwise, even if he was his brother-in-law, the general manager might not have taken a liking to him. He entrusted him with important tasks and arranged for him to learn by Lu's side. This was also in preparation for him to take over a higher position in the future. Lin-Yi and Fanny came to the inner room of the office together. At a glance, Lin-Yi saw the safe near the office desk. Unfortunately, this safe was a safe with a password and fingerprint verification. Both were indispensable. Of course, Lin-Yi could break it by force if he wanted to, but he definitely couldn't now. Not to mention that Fanny was here. Even if she wasn't, he didn't have the time. What should I do? How can I get the yellow document in the safe? If only I could retrieve things from the air. Just thinking about it, I could get the yellow document in the safe. How great would that be? Linny suddenly had an idea. My jade pendant. I wonder if it can do that? Usually, when Lin-Yi stored things in the space of the jade pendant, he used his mind. For example, when Lin-Yi saw an item in front of him, he only needed to think about it and store it in the space of the jade pendant. Then, the item would smoothly enter the space of the jade pendant without Lin-Yi having to do anything. Chapter 3267. Thinking of this, Lin-Yi quietly walked to the side of the safe while Fanny was opening the general manager's cabinet. Then, he used his mind to move the yellow folder inside the safe into the space of the jade pendant. Suddenly, 2 yellow folders appeared out of nowhere in the space of the jade pendant. This discovery surprised and delighted Lin-Yi. His hypothesis was correct. As long as he could think of something that could fit in the space of the jade pendant, he could put it in the space of the jade pendant, even if it was separated by a safe. This was because Zhao Lao had said before that the space of the jade pendant seemed to be some kind of fourth-dimensional space. It was not restricted by the current third-dimensional space. The rules of the two were different, so Lin-Yi could easily steal the folders. Of course, Big Brother Feng had said before that there was only 1 yellow folder. Lin-Yi had obtained 2, so one of them must be something else, and not the address of the drug refining base. However, it didn't matter. He could take it back and look at it. Now, Lin-Yi didn't dare to take it out and look at it carelessly. After all, Fanny was right beside him. After doing all this, Lin-Yi quietly went to Fanny's side. At this time, Fanny successfully took out a small black box. Obviously, it was filled with drugs. "It's here. It's so heavy. Carry it," Fanny said to Secretary Lu. Lin-Yi nodded. He happily carried the box of drugs in his hand and walked out of the office with Fanny. "Boss, it's here," Fanny said to the general manager and pointed at Lin-Yi. Lin-Yi put the box on the coffee table as he was told. He opened the box and showed the contents to President He. "President He, please inspect the goods." The general manager nodded and said to President He, "I believe that you are an experienced person. Before you came, you must have done your homework on the purity of the drugs. The goods I prepared for you are of the highest purity. After all, you and I are both leaders of organizations. I wouldn't lie to you for a single transaction." He Luodan had done a lot of research on drugs. He did a preliminary inspection on the drugs in Lin-Yi's box. It was just as the general manager said. The box was filled with high purity. He smiled in satisfaction. "President He, if that's the case, then we'll do the transaction." With that, He Luodan took the box from the floor and put it on the coffee table to show it to the general manager. However, this action of He Luodin made Lin Yi's heart skip a beat. This big box was filled with euros. From the size of the box, he could tell that there were at least a few hundred million in it. If he could get it, it would be able to solve the financial crisis of Yushauka's orphanage. With that thought, Lin Yi quietly used his will and put the euros in the box into the jade space. The jade space wasn't big, but it was more than enough to put in the box of euros. In an instant, the box became empty. All the euros went into Lin Yi's jade space. At this time, He Luodan entered the password on the box. With a bang, the box opened. However, the box was opened. Other than Lin Yi, everyone was shocked. The box was empty. Of course, the most shocked person was He Luodan himself. His face turned dark and his breathing became rapid. After a while, he said angrily, "President, what is the meaning of this?" "President He, I was going to ask you. You brought an empty box to trade, and you're asking me why?" The general manager's face darkened as well. The box was empty. The general manager thought that President He was trying to rob him. "Why would I bring an empty box? Why would I bring an empty box to trade?" He Luodan said as he lifted the box with his hand. He said coldly, "This box didn't have any money in it. I carried it all the way here, and now that it's empty, do you think I wouldn't feel anything?" "President He, from what you're saying, you're not thinking that I took the money from the box, are you?" The general manager asked coldly. "Humph." He Luodan humphed. He didn't say it out loud, but the meaning was clear. "President He, I have to remind you that this box has been under your feet since we came in. I didn't even touch it. Besides, do you think I can take the money without opening the box? What do you think I am? A magician? I don't think even a heavenly Tao master has the ability to teleport, right? This isn't something a practitioner can do. If it's not technology, then it must be some kind of supernatural ability. But do you think there's this kind of technology or supernatural ability? If I had this kind of ability, I would go to the bank and move gold bricks. I wouldn't have to sell drugs to earn money." The general manager's face regained its calmness. He explained indifferently, "Of course, this doesn't eliminate the possibility that President He is trying to frame me." "You." President He was infuriated by the general manager's words, but he wasn't a stupid person. Indeed, the box had been at his feet since he came in. It didn't leave his body at all. Moreover, he was a peak late-stage heaven stage master. If someone opened the box and stole the money under his nose, it was impossible for him not to notice it. Moreover, the money in the box wasn't a small amount. Even if he wanted to move it, it would take some time. Who could steal it all at once? However, it was impossible to say that the box was swapped because the box's password was set by him. Moreover, there were some marks of the Overseas Cultivator Association on the box. It was impossible for the Red Conch to create such a box in such a short time. Moreover, who could have swapped the box under his nose? Therefore, President He was a little puzzled at this moment. Did he see a ghost? Did he not bring the money here at all? He was a little uncertain. After all, this was very strange. If the money disappeared into thin air, then it would be really strange. "All right, you have a computer here, right? I'll transfer the money to you." He Lutu took a deep breath. Although he was very puzzled, he couldn't stop the transaction. He didn't have cash, so he could only use the transfer method. Although if he really lost the money, he would suffer a huge loss. If he didn't continue the transaction, then he would lose everything. Chapter 3268. "Yes, boss." Fanny nodded and turned to go into the office to get the laptop. Lin Yi, on the other hand, followed Fanny like it was a matter of fact. He looked like he was eager to help. Fanny and the CEO didn't suspect Lin Yi in the slightest, since he'd been the one who'd helped them with the drugs. Fanny was obviously used to helping the general manager with this task. She turned on her laptop and opened the online banking page with ease. Then, she entered the Conch Group's company account number. Next, it was time for He Luodan to enter the account number and password for the payer. "I'll help you." Linny appeared just as Fanny was about to pick up the laptop, gesturing for Fanny to hold it for him. Fanny didn't think much of it and nodded. She let Lin Yi take the laptop, and Lin Yi and Fanny walked out together. Lin Yi, however, deliberately lagged behind Fanny by half a step. He'd been staring at the laptop since the beginning, and while Fanny wasn't paying attention, Lin Yi quickly typed on the keyboard. Lin Yi's hand speed was quite fast, or else he wouldn't have been able to steal the money from the scammers and Xinyan when he first came to Songshan. So, Lin Yi had already finished his work by the time he stepped out of the office. Lin Yi respectfully placed the laptop in front of He Luodan after walking out of the office. Chairman He, please enter your account number and password. The laptop screen was facing He Luodan's side, and since he had to enter the password, neither the CEO nor Fanny could look at the laptop screen. Lin Yi, on the other hand, tried to avoid arousing suspicion. The coffee's cold. I'll go get some hot water. With that, Lin Yi pushed the door open and walked out of the CEO's office. Chairman He, please inspect the goods. The CEO nodded. I believe you're an experienced man, and you've done your homework on the purity of the drugs before you came. I'll prepare it for you. Of course, Lin Yi didn't leave the office to get some hot water. Lin Yi wanted to run away. He'd already gotten what he wanted, and if he stayed here, wouldn't that be asking for trouble? And so, Lin Yi entered the elevator, but he didn't go down to the lowest floor. Instead, he went to the floor where the real Secretary Liu had fainted. He quickly walked into the bathroom and switched his clothes with Secretary Liu's, then massaged the back of Secretary Liu's neck a few times. Secretary Liu would wake up naturally in about 10 minutes. After doing all that, he quickly got into the elevator again and left Conk Group. He flagged down a rental car and left the place quickly. Upstairs, in the CEO's office. Okay, CEO, I've transferred the money successfully. 300 million euros, that's the price we agreed on before. He Lewin pressed the confirm button on the computer, entered the SMS verification code on his phone, and completed the transaction. There's a notification on my phone. I just need to wait. The CEO saw that President He transferred the money so quickly, and he nodded with satisfaction. He also relaxed his vigilance. It seemed that the Overseas Cultivator Association was still very sincere in the transaction. The euros in the box were gone. It might be an accident. However, after waiting for about 5 minutes, the CEO still hadn't received the notification of the money being transferred. He couldn't help but frown slightly. His account was set up in one of the most advanced and efficient banks in the world. Generally, the transfer would be received in real time. It was impossible for the money to not be transferred in 5 minutes. President He, what bank are you from? Why hasn't the money been transferred in 5 minutes? The CEO couldn't help but ask. It's XX Bank. Don't we, who do gang business, usually set up accounts in XX Bank? It's safer and more efficient. He Luan was slightly surprised. You haven't received it yet? That's impossible. It's the same bank as me. It shouldn't be so slow. The CEO also frowned, feeling that this matter was a bit strange. My phone has received a notification that the transfer was successful. If you want, can you call and check? He Luan pondered for a moment and asked. All right. The CEO nodded, took out his phone, and dialed the bank's inquiry number. Of course, even Fanny didn't know the password for his account. She only knew the account number. After waiting for a moment, the CEO couldn't help but frown slightly. Then he hung up the phone and said to He Luan, President He, I didn't receive your money. Impossible. Look at the computer. It clearly showed that the transfer was successful. He Luan was anxious, pointing at the computer screen and said, Let me see. The CEO also felt a bit strange. Could it be that there was a problem with the bank system? He turned his head and looked at the computer screen that He Luan moved over. It showed that the transfer was successful. 300 million euros has been transferred to the account. Seeing this, the CEO couldn't help but be surprised, then said, President He, did you make a mistake? My account name is Conk Group Trading Company, Limited, not Songshan Orphanage. What Songshan Orphanage? He Luan was also surprised, but when he saw the account name he transferred to, his face suddenly showed a surprised and angry expression. CEO, are you messing with me? This is the account name that your secretary entered for me. I don't *King know anything about Songshan Orphanage. Fanny, what's going on? The CEO turned his head and looked at Fanny with some doubt. Boss, this is impossible. I don't know anything about any orphanage. I personally entered your account information. There's no mistake. Fanny said firmly. The CEO nodded. In his opinion, Fanny wouldn't make such a low-level mistake. Moreover, Songshan Orphanage had nothing to do with him. Even if there was a mistake, it wouldn't be so ridiculous. Chapter 3269. F*CKU. You're slandering me. He Luonan was so angry that his face turned red. He slammed the computer against the wall and smashed it into pieces. He jumped up and revealed his peak late-stage, heaven-stage strength. In He Luonan's eyes, this was the CEO's plan. He and Fanny were just acting. Previously, he had felt that something was wrong. His suitcase of euros had disappeared for no reason. This time, the money had been transferred to some orphanage. Other than He Luonan himself, everyone here was the CEO's man. It was no wonder he was suspicious. He Luodong, are you playing games with me? Do you want to take my drugs without spending a single cent? The general manager also stood up, revealing his peak late-stage heaven ranks power. In the CEO's eyes, He Luonan was playing tricks. First, he brought an empty suitcase to fish in troubled waters. When he saw that he couldn't fool him, he transferred the money to an orphanage account. Was he trying to fool them? Who's playing tricks? Who knows? CEO, if you give me the suitcase of drugs now, I can't pretend that nothing happened. I'll admit that I'm unlucky to have lost the euros in the suitcase. He Luonan snorted. Don't tell me that the orphanage isn't your account. He Luonan, how can you say something like that? I think you're the one who wants to reap without sowing. Get lost now and I won't pursue this. Our conch group doesn't welcome insincere partners like you. The CEO said angrily. You're courting death. He Luonan had never been this angry before. He couldn't take it anymore. He pulled out a whip from his waist. This was his heaven-stage divine weapon. He lashed it at the CEO. This soft whip was very similar to the heaven-rank sharp weapon that Little One used. However, Little One's whip was a genuine heaven-rank sharp weapon. As for He Luolua's whip, it was based on his impression of the Five Elements sect when he was young. As for Little Yi's heaven-stage divine weapon, it was still in Lin Yi's hands. You're the one courting death, right? How dare you make a move in Conch Group's headquarters? The CEO was furious. He pulled out 2 hammers from both sides of his legs and threw them at He Luonan. This was his heaven-stage divine weapon, boom, boom, boom. A deafening sound echoed from the general manager's office as 2 peak late-stage heaven-rank experts fought. At this time, the real Secretary Liu, who was lying in the toilet cubicle, slowly woke up. However, he didn't know what happened to him. He only remembered that he came to the toilet, but he didn't know what happened after that. Did he faint in the toilet? Secretary Liu quickly checked his body. He didn't find anything unusual. There were no injuries on his body, and he didn't lose anything. He could only think that he was too tired these past few days and lacked sleep, so he fainted in the bathroom. In fact, he was really tired these few days, so he didn't think too much about it. At that moment, Lin Yi had already changed into 2 taxis and returned to the spa center. Lin Yi's goal had been achieved. Naturally, Lin Yi didn't know that the 2 peak heaven-rank powerhouses were already fighting. He would be speechless if he knew. He didn't expect that the account that Lin Yi casually changed was tricked by He Luonan. Of course, if He Luonan found out before the transfer, then the result would be different. At that time, the CEO definitely wouldn't think that it was He Luonan or Fanny who changed it. Then, it could only be Secretary Liu. Therefore, Lin Yi was afraid that something might go wrong. Before returning to the spa center, he returned to his old appearance and entered the spa center. Then, he quickly knocked on Su Shirhan and Cheng Yi's door and ran away with them. The car was stolen by Lin Yi before. It belonged to a local biker gang. It was probably a stolen car, so after it was lost, the biker gang didn't look for it and asked Lin Yi to stop it not far from the spa center. Lin Yi didn't explain and directly brought Su Shirhan and Cheng Yi to the nearest airport. At noon, a large passenger plane took off and flew to the nearest city. In the first-class cabin, Lin Yi booked 4 seats. Lin Yi sat in a row, Su Shihan and Qing Yi sat in another row, and the 2 seats were facing each other. It was convenient for the 3 to chat. Lin Yi, what happened? Qing Yi whispered. Nothing, it's all settled. Lin Yi obviously didn't want to tell Qing Yi and Su Shihan about what happened in Rueleda town. He didn't want them to worry. And so, Qing Yi didn't ask anymore and started chatting with Su Shihan. When the plane landed in the nearest city to Island X, they got off the plane. Lin Yi, Su Shihan, and Qing Yi got on the plane that Yang Qiqi arranged for them to transfer to Island X. They breathed a sigh of relief. Up until now, they were completely safe. But Lin Yi was a little surprised. Such a big thing happened to the Conk group. Why didn't they send a large-scale search for him? As long as he pulled up the previous surveillance footage, he could determine that the previous Yi Ling was a suspicious character. Then, after comparing him with He Luodong, his identity was on the verge of being revealed. With the capabilities of the Red Conches and the Overseas Cultivators Association, it was possible for them to conduct a large-scale search in the vicinity. Why wasn't anyone intercepting them? But what Lin Yi didn't know was that the CEO and He Luonan were both heavily injured. Both of them suffered serious internal injuries. But even so, the CEO didn't dare kill He Luonan. He only asked the association to send someone to take He Luonan away. After all, He Luonan's death would be a huge grudge. But now, they were only heavily injured, and both of them weren't feeling well. This was the end of the matter. When they recovered and calmed down, they could talk about who was in the right and who was in the wrong. But for the time being, both of them were heavily injured, and they didn't have the chance to negotiate. If the person in charge didn't say anything, the subordinates wouldn't act rashly either. So this matter was delayed, and Lin Yi found a huge loophole. In fact, Lin Yi was a little regretful after entering the Songshan orphanage's account. First, whether the transfer was successful or not. If He Luonan found out, he wouldn't be able to leave Rueleda town. At that time, the association and Red Conch would send people to search for him. Chapter 3270. As for He Luodu, it wouldn't be easy for him to cause trouble here. After all, he had suffered a loss once. He wouldn't come for an orphanage again. Plus, they didn't know if this orphanage had anything to do with Lin Yi or not. After all, this was just a donation account for Songshan Orphanage. Anyone could transfer money to it. Maybe it was a charity account that Lin Yi randomly entered to trick He Luodu. But now that Lin Yi had safely arrived at Island X, there was no need to think about it anymore. Outside the airport, there was a car with a butterfly logo. Lin Yi knew that this was Yang Qiqi's car. Lin Yi was very familiar with this SIG. He'd worked for this organization for many years, and it was through this symbol on Qiqi's ring that he recognized Qiqi as an assassin of this organization. He treated Qiqi as well. After Lin Yi got off the plane, he got into the car with Su Shihan and Qing Yi. As expected, Yang Qiqi was smiling and waving at them. What made Lin Yi nervous was that little Jio was there too. This girl, who often helped Lin Yi in his daily life and missions, made Lin Yi's breath tighten. Lin Yi knew what little Jio was thinking, but Lin Yi's thoughts were different from the past. At that time, Lin Yi thought that the people of the assassin group were all drifting, without any future to speak of, and it was impossible for them to know their own future, so he ignored little Jio's hints again and again. Including Yu Ning's confession, Lin Yi kept it in his heart. But it was different now, and Lin Yi's way of thinking had changed as well. Facing these feelings, Lin Yi didn't have the same concerns as before. After all, everyone's fate would be the same in the future. Little Nine was also an inheritor. In essence, she was no different from Mingyao, Yushu, and Xiao Xiao. They were the same type of people. So, Lin Yi could be honest with her now. He just didn't know that when she saw him again, would the feelings in her heart still be love? A favorable impression from childhood might be able to persist stubbornly for many years, but when one became an adult and met again, one would realize that this favorable impression was just a child's play. In reality, things were still the same, but people had changed. When Lin Yi saw little Jiu again, his feelings were very complicated. Lin Yi didn't know what he thought of little Jiu as. Was she a childhood playmate, or just a little sister? Or did she have a trace of first love? To be honest, When Linny was young, he really liked little Gio and little Gio. But as he grew older and knew his mission, he hid this trace of feelings in the bottom of his heart. Over time, Linny didn't even want to meet little Gio and little Gio face to face, because after meeting, Linny didn't know what to say. This was also the reason why Linny didn't return to Island X, the place where he lived as a child, all these years. However, now Linny had thought it through. Some things couldn't be avoided if you wanted to. Some people were destined to appear in the trajectory of your life. Just like young Chi-Chi, they met again and again in the trial. Like little Gio, although they often contacted by phone, Linny avoided the emotional problems between the two again and again. However, little Gio unexpectedly became an inheritor. This made Linny unable to avoid it again. The women around Linny already had too many inheritors, and with little Gio joining them, Linny couldn't refuse. Fate seemed to be playing a joke on Linny. Everything, from the beginning to the end, had never changed. Ninth Princess, long time no see. Linny adjusted his emotions, got in the car, and greeted little Gio. Oomph! Little Gio saw Linny, and although there was a flash of surprise in her eyes, she still snorted coldly. Long time? You didn't want to see me, right? Little Gio's words inevitably made Linny a little embarrassed. Linny laughed dryly and didn't continue her topic. He turned to young Chi-Chi. Chi-Chi, the Overseas Practitioners Association didn't find trouble with you again, right? Not really. They just asked a little and didn't find me again. Young Chi-Chi shook her head. The association, naturally, wouldn't be stupid enough to touch young Chi-Chi. After all, young Chi-Chi wasn't an independent practitioner without any foundation. Even if she was, questioning her without any evidence would chill the other members' hearts. Everyone joined the Overseas Cultivators Association to seek protection from the organization. However, if the members were to be suspected and questioned, who would want to join the association in the future? Fortunately, little Gio only complained to Linny a little, venting her dissatisfaction. She didn't blame Linny too much. She used to be in charge of the entire assassin organization's intelligence and coordination work. In her position, nothing in the assassin organization was a secret to her. Seeing assassins die from time to time, she was already numb. She knew what Linny was thinking. Linny was also an assassin, and he couldn't see his own future. Linny couldn't promise her anything, and he didn't dare to promise her anything. That included her and young Chi-Chi. So, little Gio really didn't blame Linny. Now, her identity had changed, and Linny's identity had changed. Only then could there be a future, but this future was also very uncertain. That inheritor project, whether it was dangerous or not, whether Linny could participate in it, these were all unknown. It could be said that although Linny's thinking had changed, his situation wasn't any better. In fact, it became even more unknown. Linny bro, don't think too much. The future will come to an end. These days, let's just play on the ground like when we were kids, okay? Little Gio had thought it through and decided to cherish the good times in front of her. Okay. Linny was also mentally and physically exhausted during this time. Plus, Linny had to face the troubles that would come after he returned to Donghai City. His true strength had been exposed. Once he returned, the Black Horse Society, the Everyday sect, the Dongfang family, and even the ancient Feng family would come looking for him. When that time came, with so many people looking for trouble, how would he deal with them? Since he couldn't think of a solution right now, Linny might as well stay here and relax. This time was too tiring. Chapter 3271. Linny didn't have to worry about Miss Mingyao anymore. She was now the palace master of Dark Palace, and a palace master with real power. She was completely different from Yuan Air. Who would dare cause trouble for her? Shu's identity was there as well. She was the inheritor of Flaming Mountain. Even if House Yu didn't take care of her in the dark, she still had the name of Flaming Mountain. House Yu could show it to the world anytime, and no one would dare touch her. As for Wang Xinyan, although she didn't have any inheritor status, she was still Xiaolong's fiancée in name. With Kong Ming, the elder of the Sky Elixir sect, no one would dare touch her. The girls in the villa were fine. As for the others who were related to Lin Yi but didn't live with him, he didn't have to worry. The ancient people weren't that reckless. Common noble houses weren't much, but the ancient houses and sects wouldn't drag them down for no reason just because of Lin Yi. So, after considering the pros and cons, Lin Yi calmed down and stayed on Island X, planning to relax for a few days. Lin Yi's considerations weren't wrong. When Elder Xianxin learned that the Everyday sect's pure young Skylord had broken through to Sky-class late phase peak in order to avenge his junior brother, Pure in Skylord, he was overjoyed. Father-in-law, this Everyday sect is really a strange sect. Hatred can actually increase the speed of training. It's really strange, Kong Mingming said, confused. Yes, that's how their sect is, but how they train has nothing to do with us. It's useless even if we know their arts. Let's focus on the main points. Elder Xianxin had no interest in the other sect's arts. This was because he was restricted by the uniqueness of the practitioner's arts. Even if he knew someone else's arts, he couldn't practice it. He didn't even know the main points of it. He practiced blindly without anyone's guidance. Even if he destroyed his current arts and started from scratch, he might not be able to practice it successfully. Instead, it was easy for him to go berserk. This was why no one had ever studied Lin Yi's arts. Studying it wouldn't be useful, so what was the point? Yes. Shall we release the news now and inform the Dongfang clan, the Black Horse Association, and the Everyday sect? Kong Mingming nodded and quickly asked, all right. It's time. Patriarch Xianxin nodded and agreed with Kong Mingming's decision. In fact, Lin Yi didn't have much strength. He was chased by the Overseas Cultivators Association like a stray dog. The ones who killed those Heaven Rank Peak Late Stage and Perfect Heaven Rank Peak Late Stage experts were the three ancestors of the blood-clothed underworld sect. For a time, the entire ancient era was in an uproar. However, since this news was released by the Five Element sect, the ancient era sects did not doubt it at all. After all, the Five Element sect was a lofty existence in the ancient era. It was impossible for them to speak carelessly, and there was no need for them to speak carelessly. Moreover, for this kind of thing, as long as they had connections overseas, it would be fine. Which of these ancient sects did not have a personal friend in the Overseas Cultivators Association? After all, cultivators from the Overseas Cultivators Association would occasionally come to participate in trials, auctions, and other activities. Of course, most of the ancient era sects were shocked when they heard the news. Among them, there were also some who were angry and worried. The ones who were angry were naturally the sects that had people killed. At this moment, these people hated Lin Yi, but they hated the blood-clothed underworld sect. They hated them to the core. The blood-clothed underworld sect did not put the other ancient era sects in their eyes. You casually killed the high-level cultivators of other ancient era sections. This is simply breaking the rules. Are you so overbearing? Do you think you are invincible with two perfect heaven rank experts? Even powerful existences like the Five Element sect are not as overbearing as you, right? Since Lin Yi is still overseas, then let's use the ancestors of the blood-clothed underworld sect as sacrifices. As for Lin Yi, after dealing with the blood-clothed underworld sect, there was no need to worry about not being able to deal with Lin Yi. These ancient era sects also knew very well that Lin Yi must have offered some conditions that the blood-clothed underworld sect could not refuse. However, no matter what the conditions were, the ancestors of the blood-clothed underworld sect were dead, and Lin Yi had no one to rely on. However, even if he could not kill the three ancestors of the blood-clothed underworld sect, he had to kill the weakest, gloomy ancestor, and then make the blood-clothed underworld sect spit out a lot of benefits in order to appease the anger of these sections. This time, several ancient era sects that did not form an alliance with each other finally sat together. The Everyday sect, the ancient Dongfang family, the ancient Feng family, and the Black Horse Society participated in this revenge meeting. Of course, Feng Tianhu only participated as a bystander and kept a low profile. His attendance was only to give advice and to confirm that Lin Yi did not have that kind of strength. Feng Tianhu, are you sure that Lin Yi really lost his strength? Dongfang Badeo's cold eyes looked at Feng Tianhu. If it wasn't for this Feng Tianhu who encouraged his daughter, the Feng family would not have lost so many people one after another. However, then again, the Dongfang family did not think that a small Lin Yi would cause so much trouble. Yes, Elder Dongfang, I placed a spy beside Su Shihan, and now this spy is also responsible for investigating the news related to Lin Yi. Feng Tianhu nodded affirmatively. That's right, Elder Dongfang. I've placed a spy around Su Shihan, and he's in charge of investigating Lin Yi's whereabouts. Feng Tianhu nodded affirmatively and said, but what is certain is that Lin Yi did not lose his strength, but his strength was originally not high. The rumors outside were all exaggerated. This is all the credit of the blood-clothed underworld sect. So, as long as we destroy the blood-clothed underworld sect, or in other words, make the blood-clothed underworld sect stop, then we can kill Lin Yi? Dongfang Badeo nodded and asked, yes, or, we have the ability to force the blood-clothed underworld sect to betray us and let them kill Lin Yi. This is the safest way to achieve the purpose of killing with a borrowed knife. Feng Tianhu continued to nod and said, this is a good idea. After Dongfang Badeo listened, he agreed, and then turned to look at the president of the Black Horse Society, Qian Peguang. President Qian, what do you think? Chapter 3272. Then, he continued, although we have 4-peak late heaven stage great perfection experts, the supreme elder of our Black Horse Society is in seclusion all year round and doesn't come out to ask about anything. It's a bit difficult to count on him to take action. I will try my best to convince him. However, even 4-peak late heaven stage great perfection experts may not be able to kill the 3 bloodcloth underworld sect great perfection experts. After all, these 3 old ancestors are not weak, and they have been living a life of blood all year round. In terms of combat experience, we are not as rich as them. Yes, I also agree with President Qian's point of view. Pure Young Heavenly Lord said, I think, as long as we kill Gloomy Old Ancestor, and then force Bloodcloth Old Ancestor and Underworld Ancestor to surrender, let them kill Lin Yi, we can turn weapons of war into gifts of jade and silk. This is the best way. I agree, Dongfang Badeo said quickly. Among them, his strength was the weakest. Although he was infinitely close to the great perfection strength, he was not yet. So in this way, if they wanted to kill the 3 bloodcloth underworld sect great perfection experts, 2 groups must fight to the death. Then, he and Gloomy Old Ancestor would inevitably be the weakest existences. The 2 of them would also be the first sacrificial victims, which was not what he wanted to see. However, with so many people killing Gloomy Old Ancestor together, and then forcing Bloodcloth Old Ancestor and Underworld Ancestor to surrender, this was very easy to do. At that time, both sides would sit down and talk, and there would be no more fighting. Well, we have set this tone. We will kill Gloomy Old Ancestor together, and then force the other 2 old ancestors to surrender. This way, our goal will be achieved. At this time, the most respected ancestor of the Everyday and Everyday sect, Ancestor Madbull, spoke. This was also the conclusion of the meeting, and it was the final decision. Then let's get ready. Tomorrow, we will rush to the headquarters of the Bloodcloth Underworld sect and find the 3 old ancestors. President Qian said. The early task of the vengeance meeting had been determined. Of course, if the Bloodcloth Underworld sect agreed to kill Lin Yi instead, then these people would not have to worry about it, and the second meeting would not be held. However, while these people found out about Lin Yi, the 3 ancestors of the blood-clothed Netherworld sect also found out that Lin Yi was being hunted by the Overseas Cultivators Association. Bloodcloak Ancestor, Yellow Spring Ancestor, that's what happened. What should we do now? Ancestor Eerie Woods hurriedly relayed the news that the intelligence team had obtained to the 2 ancestors. Although Lin Yi has yet to return from overseas, I'm afraid that there will be a period of bloodshed when he returns, right? He reckoned that there was a big problem. Moreover, it's not just him who's the problem now. I reckon that those sects that lost people will want to take revenge on us, right? Ancestor Eerie Woods' words made the blood-clothed ancestor and yellow spring ancestor frown. Yes, things actually turned out like this. They didn't expect that Lin Yi's stroll overseas would cause so much trouble. If they had known earlier, they would have followed Lin Yi. At that time, the three ancestors thought that it would be troublesome for them to go overseas with their identity, so they didn't follow. Moreover, Lin Yi only went to help Su Shirhan and Qing Yi contact overseas businesses. They didn't expect that there would be more problems. But now, it was useless to regret. They could only think about how to deal with the upcoming storm. Bloodcloak, it's better to call Master and ask for his opinion. The development of the situation now is not the time for the three of us to make a decision. Ancestor Yellow Spring pondered for a moment and said, "That's right. Then who should make the call?" Blood-clothed ancestor nodded and said in agreement, "Let's go with Eerie Woods. We used to contact him through Eerie Woods." Ancestor Yellow Spring thought for a moment and said. Ancestor Eerie Woods didn't decline. He picked up the phone and dialed the number that Lin Dongfang left for them. "Master, it's me, Little Eerie Woods from Blood-Cloak Yellow Spring Sect." Ancestor Eerie Woods said politely after the call was connected. "Oh, Eerie Woods, what's the matter?" Old Man Lin picked up the phone. Since Ancestor Eerie Woods contacted him, there must be something big that they couldn't decide on. "It's like this." Ancestor Eerie Woods didn't hide anything and told Lin Dongfang everything that happened in detail. In the end, he said, "Master, we don't know what to do now. I'm afraid we can't protect Little Master anymore. Even we can't protect ourselves." "I understand. Wait for my call. I'll give you an answer in 10 minutes. Old Man Lin said indifferently as if this matter didn't affect him at all. Okay. Ancestor Eerie Woods said quickly. Old Man Lin hung up the phone and didn't stop. Although his tone was indifferent, the expression on his face was far from relaxed. He frowned and dialed another number. "Oldemo, it's me." Old Man Lin dialed his old friend Emo Kongwen's number. "What's wrong, old friend? What's the matter?" Emo Kongwen asked. "Little E, is there any trouble in the near future?" Old Man Lin asked. "What happened?" Emo Kongwen asked quickly. "It's like this." Old Man Lin told Emo Kongwen the situation in a concise manner. "Let me take a look." After Emo Kongwen finished speaking, there was no more movement on the other side. Old Man Lin didn't panic. He knew that Emo Kongwen must be calculating something. As expected, after a while, Emo Kongwen said slowly, "Yes, but it's not a dead knot. Can he resolve it himself?" Old Man Lin asked after he relaxed a little. "Maybe, maybe not." Emo Kongwen sighed and said, "I can't interfere with what's happening now. My strength is only SOSO, comparable to his opponent." "You haven't broken through yet?" Old Man Lin asked quietly. "Do you think it's easy to break through the heavenly Tao? Do you think everyone is as crazy as you?" Emo Kongwen smiled bitterly. Then, "Will Little Yi's life be in danger?" Old Man Lin thought for a while and continued to ask. "His future has already been decided. The moment he went to Songshan City and accepted that mission, it was already decided." Emo Kongwen didn't answer directly. "I understand." Old Man Lin's heart was at ease after hearing this. Chapter 3273. Look for you? Okay, let's go over now. Gloomy Forest Ancestor was slightly taken aback and immediately understood Lin Dongfang's meaning. If someone wanted to harm them, then with Lin Dongfang around, no matter how bold they were, they wouldn't dare to act rashly. They had to suffer this grievance even if they didn't want to. Lin Dongfang didn't say anything more and hung up the phone directly. Gloomy Forest Ancestor relayed Old Man Lin's words to Bloodcloak Ancestor and Netherworld Ancestor. Bloodcloak Ancestor, Netherworld Ancestor, with Master here, there's no longer any suspense in surviving this calamity. However, in order to not implicate our sects, I suggest we act in a high-profile manner and directly announce that we're going to the West Star Mountain Village. This way, the people from the Everyday and Everyday sect, Dongfang Clan, and Black Horse Society will directly go to the West Star Mountain Village to find us. Eerie Ancestor suggested. Your proposal is very good. Bloodcloak ancestor nodded in agreement. Then let's go immediately. The three old ancestors left as soon as they said they would. However, before they left, although they couldn't say that they spread the news to everyone, they still marched towards the West Star Mountain Village with great fanfare. This action fell into the ears of the Everyday sect, and the other two sects who were preparing to seek revenge from them. These clans and sects once again gathered together. This time, they originally decided to go to the blood-clothed underworld sect together. However, before they left, they received a piece of shocking news. The three ancestors of the blood-clothed underworld sect actually went to the West Star Mountain Village? What kind of place was that? Pure Young Heavenly Venerate, your everyday after sun sect is very knowledgeable. Do you know what kind of place this is? President Qin Buguang of the Black Horse Gang asked curiously. I don't know, but it shouldn't be a big place. How big can a village be? Pure Young Heavenly Venerate shook his head and said, Don't worry about where this place is. We should first figure out what the three ancestors of the Blood Cloak Underworld sect are doing there. I think it's possible that they know that we are going to retaliate against them, so they deliberately found a godforsaken place to hide. Dongfang Badeo pondered for a moment and said, This was the only speculation he could think of. After all, the three ancestors of the blood-clothed netherworld sect went to a place that they had never heard of, and it was a sudden move. It was a bit strange no matter how one looked at it. Especially now, the three ancestors of the blood-clothed underworld sect must have received the news that the Everyday sect, Dongfang clan, and Black Horse Society were going to join forces to deal with them. There is this possibility. Heavenly Venerate Pure Young nodded. Ancestral Master Wild Bull, what do you think? Kuang Yo was a man of virtue and prestige, but he spent most of his time in seclusion. He didn't have any other thoughts. He thought about it, but didn't say anything in the end. He turned to Pinliang and whispered, Mr. Zhong, what do you think? This time, Zhong Pinliang participated in this revenge plan to gain experience for himself. First, he and Lin Yi had a deep hatred. Second, after he ate countless treasures and elixirs, his strength finally rose to the peak of the late stage of Earth class. Now he was only one step away from Heaven class. If he wanted to break through, he must have an opportunity. Although the Everyday sect also had elixirs like Gathering Chi Pill, Zhong Pingliang was a person who wanted to be promoted to the Heavenly Tao. He certainly wouldn't take any Gathering Chi Pill easily. However, Zhong Pingliang's current identity couldn't be exposed. His identity was only known to the disciples of the Everyday sect. His identity to the public was a military advisor of Ancestral Master Wild Bull. Of course, it was understandable that Ancestral Master Wild Bull respected him a little. In the past, many emperors were courteous to military advisors, and the ancient sects who followed the ancient etiquette naturally didn't find it strange, so this wouldn't arouse the suspicion of others. I think that we've made a mistake. Zhong Pingliang said faintly and majestically, We must know what the three ancestors of the Bloodcloak Underworld sect are doing. Why must we know? What they do has nothing to do with us. Our goal is to find them, kill them, or make them surrender. The world is so big. Except for Heavenly Island, is there any place we can't go as a group? It's really a wake-up call. Mr. Zhong is really a genius. Although Chunyang Tianzuan felt that Zhong Pingliang's words were reasonable, it didn't reach the state of enlightenment. However, he was Zhong Pingliang's disciple, so naturally, he didn't forget to flatter his master. And Dongfang Badeo and Qin Buguang, although they didn't think that Zhong Pingliang's words were so magical, they also felt that Zhong Pingliang's words were right. Their purpose was to find the three ancestors of the Bloodcloak Underworld sect to settle accounts. Who cared about what they were doing in the West Star Mountain Village? Thinking of this, Dongfang Badeo also nodded. Mr. Zhong is right. Then let's pack up and get ready to go. So, the revenge squad formed by these people also followed the direction of the navigator and went to the West Star Mountain Village. However, when they set off, the three ancestors had already arrived at the West Star Mountain Village at this moment. For the Masters of the Peak Late Stage of Heaven Stage and the Masters of the Peak Late Stage of Heaven Stage, it actually didn't take too much time to run to the West Star Mountain Village with their legs. In the yard last time, the ancestors of the Bloodcloak ancestor, the Netherworld ancestor, and the Mad Bull ancestor once again met their master, Lin Dongfang, who they respected and feared. Bloodcloak, Netherworld, Ghastly Forest, greets the master. The three ancestors, who were highly respected and famous in the ancient world, at this moment in front of Lin Dongfang, greeted him respectfully like children. Well, you're here. Lin Dongfang glanced at the three people in front of him and nodded. Master, it's our fault. Not only did we fail to help the little master, but we also brought trouble to the little master. Now the three of us can't even protect ourselves. The Ghastly Forest ancestor had a bitter face and apologized carefully. Lin Dongfang waved his hand indifferently. Although he didn't get a clear reply from Mo Kongwen, Lin Dongfang already knew at this moment that he wouldn't have too big a problem. He should be able to get through it. As the saying goes, things will sort themselves out when they get there. Therefore, Lin Dongfang didn't blame the three people in front of him. In any case, the three people in front of him had good intentions. Without their help, Lin Yi wouldn't be able to resolve the crisis so easily. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.